Your favorite porn movies? Is it X? Is it Pearl? Or is it Maxine? Who knows? I don't know. I'm a little
A
up
distinct
in the
lack
air.
of porn in the later installments in this franchise, I would say.
Yes, and to its detriment in in almost every way. I think that was one of the funnier things about the original one. Hello, everybody. We are live.
Are we live?
Just
There it
popped
is.
up.
I see it.
Hello, everybody.
Look at that.
Yeah, let's hope
Hi lads,
OBS.
let's hope OBS works today. Yes, let's hope it does.
Yeah, fingers
I'm
fucking crossed. I wouldn't hold out hope though. It is not. It has not been our friend of late.
not luckily not just us. I've seen a number of other streams run into this problem. So hopefully Discord
Yes.
just fixes whatever they did to break what was already working just fine. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Hello everyone in the chat. How's it going? I hope you're having a fine Sunday. Today we're going to talk about another movie. You know how much we love movies. We're going to talk about MaXXXine, but I suppose we'll probably also talk about Pearl and X because this is all part of one
One.
loosely connected trilogy.
Yes, I
Um,
want to put the word trilogy in air quotes there. Loosely connected
yes,
trilogy. Loose
technically,
would be
it's
defining.
technically a trilogy. Yeah, we'll
Yes.
talk about how well they tie together. But for those who don't know, X was the first movie, and then Pearl is a prequel to X, and now MaXXXine is a direct sequel to X.
Yes, and all of
So,
this, Donald, is technically a prequel to Devs, I've heard. So, it is tangentially connected. Uh, yeah, there you go.
yes, this is all
This
this
is
is
all
not
the
devs
origin story, the origin story of
for
Forrest,
devs. Yes, yes. MaXXXine will eventually give birth to Forrest, who will. Yeah,
who will
you
create
get the idea.
the Devs universe. So
So
really,
yeah,
this is like the Torah to the Bible. Yeah, in that sense.
yes. I wonder what a Bible prequel would look like. Anyway, yeah, today we're going to talk about mostly MaXXXine, but like I said, we'll touch on the other films as well. MaXXXine is fresh in theaters, just came out last or this weekend, right?
Yeah.
So it's new and fresh. So I assume many people in the chat will not have seen it yet. So we will definitely tell you whether we think you should go see it before we start spoiling anything. Um, let's start with X. Hugh, what did you think of X? And well, you can talk about X and Pearl, but what did you think of the
Yeah.
previous installments in this little mini retro horror slasher franchise?
I really enjoyed X when I watched it. I did. It took me a while to get around to it, but I thought it was kind of fun. It's like just a little slasher movie, right? Like a little bit of
Yeah,
the main twist being that you've got your where in other slasher movies the porn is sort of implied. In this one it's very in your face about it. The whole plot is that they go to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre house and film a porno in the shed across the driveway, and the elderly couple who lives at the house, they discover it, and they're kind of they're kind of kinky. There's some kinky shit going on with them, and so they go on a little murder spree, a little fucking touching silly little murder spree. There's an alligator pet in a lake, which is just like kind of a fun over the top twist. That's kind of
that gets
interesting.
more elaboration in Pearl.
Yeah, yeah, a little. Yeah, it does a little bit, which is interesting as well. Um, but basically this like weird kinky couple, the elderly couple, runs into somebody who's got a little more oomph than they do. It's a which I so another thing that I liked about it, right, is it's like a little twist on your general slasher movie where instead of a morally superior final girl who ends up defeating the big bad monster Michael Myers Mask Man, these people, the murderers run into somebody who's worse than them. She's like
Yeah,
she's better at being bad than they are, which is
Yeah.
which is nice. That's the thing that really sold me on it, right? Is that it kind of has an extra layer to it in that way. You know, you kind of play with the expectation that it's going to be a revulsion of the immorality of what they're doing, and instead it turns into sort of them just being like, "Nah, I've fully embraced being more of an asshole than you, and I'm gonna like." And then she runs over the old lady's face and with the truck, and it's fucking sick.
Yeah.
So it was pretty fun. It's a fun movie. I would recommend
Pretty
checking X out.
funny too. That's what I enjoyed
Yes.
most about it. It's not the most amazing screenplay. It's not the most amazing story you'll ever see on film.
No.
But X is pretty fun and funny. The jokes in there, and so that makes it quite enjoyable for me. I like it as well. It's a very simple, kind of straightforward slasher movie with a twist. I like the sort of retro 70s aesthetic that it attempts. I think it mostly pulls it off pretty well, and I appreciate that. All of the movies in this little franchise are kind of what would you say? They're imitations of certain eras in filmmaking
Yeah,
with varying
nominally,
degrees.
yeah, varying degrees
With
of success, I think is
yes, I think X is probably most successful. I would
yes.
say. Um, MaXXXine would follow in terms of how well it imitates the films of the time period in which it takes place. Um, yeah, X is a perfectly enjoyable, fun little movie. Nothing crazy, but I enjoyed it quite a bit. Pearl seems to be more popular than X, but I'm one of those people who doesn't quite like it as much as X, mostly because it's not as much fun. It's just not as enjoyable as an experience for me. It's basically a character study of the old woman from X when she was a young person,
Yeah.
also played by Mia Goth. And it's a really good actor showcase for Mia Goth. She gets to do pretty
Yes.
incredible things, and there's some very strong scenes, but I think as an overall story, it's a bit messier. It doesn't quite come together as
Yeah,
well.
so one of the problems, the big problems that I had with Pearl, right, is that so in X you can sort of you get that Texas Chainsaw. It deliberately apes a little bit on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre thing, where
Yeah,
it opens with I'm pretty sure anyway. It opens with showing you the crime scene, right, and then it does a little flashback and shows you what happened. But
yeah,
it's like you're basically watching the fallout of this horrific crime scene where there was no murderer ever caught. You see the solving of the mystery, and then it's just kind of over, right? So like there's a little ambiguity about what's going to happen next,
yeah,
and but it's small scale enough, right? Like there's one group of people who are dead, and the cops are investigating, and they don't have any leads, right? Like
yeah,
that's where we go. Pearl is very different in that the culmination of the movie is that she has murdered many people who are active participants in the community that they live in.
yeah,
And somehow she manages to cover all that up while living in the same house for the next let's call it 70 or so years. Like
yeah,
she just lives there for, or maybe it's like I think it's specifically about 40 or 50 years, but she just lives in the house where she murdered her whole family. Spoiler
yeah.
alert there. She murdered her whole family. It ends with her just standing there with this incredible expression on her face. Like the end credits of Pearl are Mia Goth at one of her best moments. She's doing some incredible work. Even
The middle of
just
this little triptych you're looking at now is the end credits frame of Pearl. It's not a still frame. She just holds this really uncomfortable, pained smile for like a minute. I don't know. It's quite a
it's
while.
quite a while,
It's
yeah.
it's longer than you want it to be. It's probably one of my favorite end credits that I've seen in a long time. It was a really nice, bold choice, and I like that. There's a lot of good stuff for Mia Goth to do in Pearl, but the story itself is just a lot
Yeah,
messier, a lot more disorganized in terms of. I remember watching it like wondering what exactly the plot is here and what we're doing and when the story proper is going to start. It kind of just has an uneven sense. It's uneven in how it's constructed and how much time certain sections of her life get, in my opinion. It doesn't
Yeah.
seem to have one strong overarching through line in terms of the plot. But
It
there's a lot
has a
of
little bit of character work in that we're watching her. She wants to be a famous person, right? And she is either hindered by the social norms of the time, which is I think it's 1918, right? Because they do parallels with the COVID pandemic to the Spanish flu pandemic, of people
yes.
walking around wearing masks and everything like that. So it's like by
Well,
the social norms of the time, she is hindered from pursuing her dream of essentially becoming a porn actress, which is
well, she
kind of a
doesn't.
funny.
She just wants to be an actress at first, right?
She just wants to be famous, and then
Yeah.
the guy at the movie theater who she ends up sleeping with as her husband is off to war, he kind of shows her some porn movies, and that like she's like, wow, I'm so fascinated by this. Ooh, wow, I didn't know you could do things like that, and so she sort of ends up. Like it's not like the goal isn't for her to become a porn actress, it's for her to become famous, and then
Yeah.
there's this like slight idolization of the naked people on the dirty movie theater screen
Yeah.
that she sort of internalizes.
There are a
uh
lot of
yeah.
there are a lot of great kills and scenes where Mia Goth gets to yell at people and be crazy. That's one of the things I
Yes.
appreciated. I think that's what people like most about Pearl, and one of the reasons that it is often rated higher than X, though I don't agree, is because she just gets to do a lot of fun stuff. There's a scene where the guy who is now going to be playing Superman, James Gunn's DC universe, I forget his name. He's the guy who runs
Oh, that's
like
okay, okay. I think
like
that's pretty good casting call there, I think.
yeah, he looks the part anyway.
David Corn
So
Sweat. Yeah, yeah.
that's the one. Um, he is talking to Pearl, and then at one point she starts to freak him out, and he's like, "I'm gonna get the hell out of here." And she like senses that something has changed, but she doesn't know what she did, and she starts yelling at him. And then
Yes.
eventually, things turn ugly from there. That's a great scene. I really like. Like Mia Goth scares me in a good way.
Yes, she's
There's
really
a
good at
lot.
that.
She's really good at that. I find her frightening, in a really compelling narrative sort of way, and it's a great showcase of her talents, Pearl. But in terms of its like retro aesthetic, I feel like Pearl is the weakest one because it takes place in 1918, but it looks nothing like movies from the time. It has this weird aesthetic fascination with The Wizard of Oz, even though that's not the right time period, but also
Yeah.
it doesn't really look like The Wizard of Oz.
It looks like you shot a period piece in a very modern way, like in a
Yeah,
lot of modern
it's
with a
very
lot of modern stuff.
saturated. The color is very saturated, like they're trying to mimic a Technicolor look. It doesn't quite look as good because the lighting isn't quite as good as those like
Yeah.
classic movies shot in Technicolor. It's not as rich in that department, but it's very colorful and saturated, so that's interesting at least. But like, the aspect ratio is wrong, the lighting is wrong. It doesn't feel coherent aesthetically for me.
Yeah.
In the
Not in the
X
same way
is
that X did. X looks like a 70 like a low budget 70s horror movie, right? Like it
yeah, except
has.
for the fact that it's not shot on like 16 millimeter film.
Yeah.
So it's there's some things about it that make it feel modern, obviously, but it does a better job. Like it uses zoom lenses and things like that to sort of mimic the film language and style of the time period. But Pearl doesn't really do that very well. It's kind of tonally, not tonally, aesthetically incoherent, I would say. Though there are some fun shots and all that, it just doesn't quite come together in the same way. Though I would say MaXXXine is somewhere in the middle. We'll talk more about
Yeah.
overall thoughts in a second. But MaXXXine is a movie that takes place in the 80s following Mia Goth's character Maxine from X. So this is a direct sequel to X. You do, I think, need to have seen X to really get Maxine,
Yes. Yeah.
but you do
Whereas you
not
don't
need to
need
have
to
seen
see, yeah,
Pearl.
you
Yeah.
don't need to have seen Pearl, and you don't even really need, in order to watch Pearl, I would say you probably don't even really need to see X. You could watch each of them independently of the other, and they would be the same. Your reaction would essentially be the same as it is in
Yeah, it's
seeing
not
them. seeing them
And
together.
the fact that Mia Goth in X plays Maxine, and she plays the crazy old woman in old age makeup, and then she also plays Pearl, obviously, because the crazy old woman and Pearl are the same character.
Yes.
Because they make that sort of stylistic choice, they do kind of feel separate in a way. Like they don't really depend upon each other. But Maxine does depend upon X. What
Yeah.
happens in X does follow Maxine around into this movie. Um, Though, yeah, so this is a movie that takes place in the 80s now, so however many years after the events of X, and I think it does a pretty good job overall. Not amazing, but pretty good job of feeling stylistically like an 80s movie. I think it nails a lot of things about that. I think it has a much more coherent aesthetic sense to it than Pearl does. But yeah, unfortunately the story.
Yeah.
Before we
We'll
spoil
definitely
too
get into
much,
that. So real quick, I want to just it's X takes place in 1979, and X takes place in 1979. Maxine takes place in 1985, and the reason that this is even that this is a trilogy in the first place, the reason there's even any of like a second or third movie really is because while filming X, they got the idea to have Mia Goth reprise her role as a younger version of the old woman, like on the same set, and so they essentially just kind of went, well, what if we just like shot it? Like, what if we did something kind of wild and just shot a second movie? While we're here, while we've got
yeah,
everybody around, and they kind of they went for it, and they both X and Pearl both came out the same year, which is
yes.
another interesting thing.
Quite remarkable and
Yeah,
unusual. Yeah, that they decided, oh, maybe we could make a little prequel based on this character when they were younger. And so let's film it while everyone's here. We have all the equipment. You're already here. I'll write it
yeah,
as
we
we're
got the
making the
location.
movie.
We'll write it. Yeah, we'll get everything set, and really like. So it's a remarkable thing to do, and I think that's another reason why those two movies in certain circles have become very famous. I think like they've got a bit of a high reputation, or they're well regarded, And I think the main
For like
reason,
indie horror
yeah, for
movies,
indie
yeah.
horror movies, they're pretty well regarded by the crowd who watches that. And I think the main reason is because it is such a remarkable thing to do two back to back and release them in the same year. I think the issue with that is that you do feel it when you're watching Pearl. You're like, yeah, this feels like you tacked it on at the end, like you just kind of like slapped it
Yeah.
together while you were writing or filming the movie that you had originally intended to make. So
You could have used more time in the oven, is
yeah,
what I would say.
yeah,
Yeah. But it's still pretty good. I
yeah, it's not
enjoyed
bad.
it.
I
I haven't,
enjoyed parts of both. I wouldn't call them excellent, but
yeah.
I had fun with both of them.
Yeah. Hugh, did you have fun with Maxine?
A little bit, a little bit, and mostly right at the beginning.
Yeah.
For the first, right up until Kevin Bacon. Kevin Bacon's in this movie, by the way, so the budget skyrockets between the
Well,
money.
I thought it was still relatively low. I'm gonna look it up while you keep talking.
So X was 1 million according to Wikipedia, and Maxine was 6.7 million.
Okay, well, that's not quite skyrocketing, but it is higher.
It's enough to get a lot of famous character actors on screen in Maxine as opposed to in X. So like we
Yeah.
have Giancarlo Esposito plays Gus in Breaking Bad, who is in the movie. Michelle Monaghan is in the movie. Bobby Cannavale, who's also
I think
a pretty
is,
well regarded
is
character
that
actor.
how you pronounce his name?
Hmm?
Is that how you pronounce his name?
How does it might be Cannavale? I don't know. He looks Italian.
Cannavale. I would have said Cannavale, but Cannavale.
Cannavale.
Who knows?
Yeah, who knows,
Anyway,
man? I don't know.
yeah,
I'm
he's in it.
probably butchering the name here.
That's all right.
And and Kevin Bacon, who Kevin Bacon's in the movie, and he's got a pretty significant role for some reason.
Unfortunately, I
Yeah.
would say.
Yeah. Not the money shows up in the cast. Like you can see where they spent that extra budget. I think they really wanted this one to kind of push it over the top. I don't think they really succeeded with it. I think it's a way more incoherent movie, especially than X. It has a
Yeah.
little bit of the Pearl issue where it kind of feels like they lose the thread of exactly what they want to do by the midway point, I would say. Like right about when
Oh
Kevin
yeah.
Bacon is chasing her around the studio lot into the Alfred
Um,
Hitchcock house, because that
yeah,
that part sucked.
the Psycho House is so useless in this movie. Okay, we're gonna get all into spoilers, but this movie just came out, so let's start with whether we'd recommend it before we start getting into spoilers. I would not recommend this movie.
No, I don't think it's worth watching.
No,
Really,
I
like it's a bit
I
of a
was pretty.
shame, but
This is a big disappointment for me because I enjoyed X. I thought it was a fun experience. I was hoping this would be along the same lines. It has a really good trailer. It has a lot of elements in it that I like. I like the sort of neo noir. I like the seedy Los Angeles underbelly sort of thing. I thought X was interesting, and the character of Maxine was interesting in X. So I was kind of curious to see what they did with her once she sort of does become famous, or at least niche famous. Um, from the trailers, they're going to introduce the real Night Stalker serial killer. So I'm like, oh, that's an interesting angle to take this.
yeah,
As
like
someone who's survived a sort of a horrible, horrific killing sort of
yeah.
tragedy sort of thing getting thrust into another one. There's something interesting you can do with that.
Well,
It
and
had a
so
lot of
like
potential.
I had said earlier with X, I think my favorite part was that you kind of took the horror movie, the slasher movie formula, and you made it like, what if this really bad, awful group of people or a couple people who are murdering teenagers met somebody who was worse than them, right? Like that's sort of
Yeah.
the what we're going with X. And you show me the trailer for Maxine, and you're like, oh, Maxine making porn in Los Angeles with the Night Stalker at the time of the real life Night Stalker. I'm like, great. Like, what happens when the Night Stalker meets this psycho porn star girl who
Yeah.
will do anything to make herself
Be
famous,
famous,
right?
essentially. Yeah.
And I'm like, great, I'm sold. Let's watch that movie. And then it doesn't. What a rug pull this movie did with that. Like, I
Oh
was
God. It
yeah.
wastes so much of what it had going for it, in my opinion. I was pretty disappointed. I was enjoying it from the beginning because it was setting up a lot of different things. It was setting up a bit too much, I would say, but
Yes.
even still, there's I saw a tweet and it just summed up the movie perfectly for me. There's like 4 or 5 different plot lines in Maxine, and they all end in the most unsatisfying way possible. That's
Yes.
a pretty good description of the movie. Um, Only in the superficial, not that they're not important, but in sort of the aesthetic sensibility of the movie and how nice some of the shots are, the music they use, the scene transitions. Only in that respect is the movie any good, really. I
Yeah.
think the writing kind of sucks, especially from the back half to the end.
And it
I was
gives
pretty disappointed.
the biggest sin of the writing, in my opinion, here is that it doesn't give Mia Goth enough to do. Like it doesn't give
No,
her
it
it
doesn't.
like it
I know.
wastes everything that we saw from her in Pearl, right? Like
That's
Pearl
the
does not
thing.
have great writing, but when
She's amazing.
yeah, she
Yeah.
is amazing at taking the moments that she is given. Like one of my favorite scenes in Pearl is that part where she's dancing with the scarecrow in the cornfield, and then out of nowhere she like pushes it to the ground, starts beating it up, climbs on top of it, and just screams, "I'm married!" right into the lens of the camera. And it's really, really funny and effective, but it's terrifying in the way that only Mia Goth has been able to pull off.
Yeah.
Like one of the things that my girlfriend and I went to see it, Maxine, together, and one of the things she said was she could have been a great Harley Quinn, and I agree. Like, she
That's
could have been
true.
a fantastic Harley Quinn in the live action stuff. I think she would have shined a little better than Margot Robbie. I know that's a bit of a hot
Uh,
take, but
is it really? Because I hate Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn.
you're
She's terrible.
I'm inclined to agree with you, although I think we're far in the
I
minority
don't
opinion
I
on that
don't
one.
know if that's even a hot take, but maybe it is. It shouldn't be. No,
Yeah,
she
I
probably
I agree.
she would have. She's got this really unnerving presence to her. I really liked her in the movie Infinity Pool as well. It's a very
Yes.
strange movie, but she's very terrifying in that. Yeah, one of the best things about this franchise before Maxine is that it's really just a vehicle for Mia Goth to be an amazing horror movie actress.
Yeah.
That's what Pearl is. There other characters get to shine and have their moments in X, for example, but Pearl is all her, right?
Yeah.
And so you kind of hope that Maxine, if nothing else, would be a great opportunity to just let her go crazy. And they don't really give her anything to do, especially in the back half. Like the main like for the climax of the movie, she's basically
Yeah,
incapacitated, has no real agency.
her
Yeah, she has
agency
nothing.
is absent.
And
It
she's the
is
main
awful.
character. It's like, why would you do that? There's so many bad choices with the direction this movie goes in. It's hard to know where to begin.
Yeah. And so real quick, I want to just so Donald asked a little bit ago, am I not a fan? Are we not fans of Kevin Bacon, or is it just late Kevin Bacon? I think Kevin Bacon is great when he's supported by good parts. I just don't
Yeah,
think that he's
I don't have any problem with Kevin Bacon, but
yeah,
his
no.
character and what the role he serves in the story sucks.
And
It's worthless.
a lot of what he's done lately has kind of they just feel like star vehicles a little bit. Like they get him because they know people like him. But like, I have no problem with him. I think he's great. He's great when he's on his game. And even when he's not, he's still a pretty like even in this, he's not a bad character. He's not doing
Not
a
his
bad
fault.
job. It's
Yeah.
not his fault. It's just like he's actually honestly he's actually one of the more fun parts of the movie.
I don't agree with that.
I don't know. I kind of like what he's doing. I just think that the plot line around it is really fucking lame. Like that's what I that's
The best
like
part of the movie for me is Bobby Cannavale. I like him as the detective
yes, he is great.
trying to because a bunch of people connected to Maxine, other porn stars and prostitutes and whoever are they're turning up dead, and so he's trying to get to her, and she doesn't want to talk to the police, and he's trying to do this hard cop routine that just keeps not working.
But
And
like
he's
yeah, they keep breaking because he's a cop who came to Los Angeles because he wanted to be an actor, but
yeah, that's a
he
funny
failed.
choice,
He
and I like him
fails
as
as
an
an actor,
actor.
and he
Yeah,
decides he's going to be a detective instead, which is just like that's a really funny thing to
yeah,
to put in your movie, and he does a great job when
yeah,
he's allowed to,
yeah.
when he gets room to work and like when he gets those little moments, he's got great delivery. Um, how he leaves the story is also pretty lame.
Oh yeah, how they wrap up everything in the movie is pretty lame.
Sucks.
Yeah.
It is really dumb. Um, so yeah, like I
I
mean, let's
don't
jump in.
recommend it. I
Yeah,
don't really recommend it.
neither do
So
I.
you just stick around. Don't bother really going to see it. I don't think it's even especially well reviewed. I know it's doing well at the box office, but it's early yet. But how's it
I think
doing in
it's
the?
probably coasting on the reputation of X and Pearl right now. I think that once people go to make time to go to see it, 'cause, like it's gonna start to decline pretty bad.
It has a 75 on Rotten Tomatoes right now, 78 from audiences. Let's see how that
78
compares.
from audiences, really?
I mean, it's early yet. We'll see what happens. But why isn't it loading? Excuse me. I would like to know how X is doing. Yeah, X has like oh my God, a 94 on Rotten Tomatoes. That seems high.
Yeah,
So
but it's 76 audience score.
yeah,
Yeah.
I just think what's remarkable is how much worse the writing is compared to the previous installments. They've gotten messier and messier from the first movie on, but this one, I find it incredibly unsatisfying, and I think thematically incoherent. We'll get all into that, but
Yeah.
what the point of this movie is, I have absolutely no idea. Like, what are you even trying to say at this point? So let's talk about it. The basic premise is that Mia Goth's character Maxine, the last girl from X, is now working as a porn star in Los Angeles. She's a famous porn star. She's doing well for herself, but she wants to be even more famous. She wants to be in legitimate movies. So the first thing we see in the film is she has an audition for a horror sequel, a fictional horror movie called The Puritan. They're making a sequel to it, and she is auditioning for that role. And I really like the audition scene. I thought the movie
Yeah.
started off strong. So she comes in and she's very confident. They're like, "Oh, you can look at the sides if you need." And she's like, "No, I know my lines." And so she has to give this little monologue to camera to start the movie and to start her audition. And she nails it. And it's a
It,
really good scene. I like
yep.
especially like how quickly she gets into that emotional state for the scene and then how quickly she snaps out of it again. That's really fun. I was really hoping for more of that in the movie. I thought we'd see more of her acting and being in movies, but that's really it
Yeah. And
for the whole movie.
she comes. So the really interesting thing about that, right, is that she comes into that audition scene and bringing carrying over the character from X, right? She is confident, kind of intimidating, a little off-putting, and just in general really charismatic, right? Like that is where she is. By the end of the movie, most of that is gone.
Yeah, she's surprisingly meek in the whole back half of the movie, and I'm like, this is not the same person who, right? Okay, so she does the audition. It goes pretty well. There's a funny like stinger to the end of the scene, so she gives this emotional monologue, and they're like, "Great, that was great," and she like wipes the tears from her eyes. She's like, "Thank you," and they're like, "All right, let's show us your breasts," because it's
Yeah,
gonna be
are
that
you
kind of
comfortable
movie.
taking off your top so we can see your
No,
breasts?
they
And she
don't
goes,
ask. I don't think they ask, "Are you comfortable?" I think it's just like,
Do you mind? They say, do you
yeah,
mind taking off your top so we can see your breasts? And she goes, yeah, whatever. And she just opens up her thing. They go, yep, thank you. And
yeah.
then we get the ZZ Top stinger as she starts strolling out of the room, which is
It's
fun.
a funny little stinger because she's auditioning for more serious roles, but they're not like, they're still kind of B movies. They're horror movies
Yeah.
where, you see tits in them. So that's a fun little like way to end that scene. It's a very well constructed scene. You can tell he wrote it first, right? And then as she's leaving the audition, she passes by a whole bunch of other women who are all lined up outside, and she's like, "You can all just go home because I fucking nailed that." And she just walks away, and they're all looking at her like, "Ugh, how dare you?"
Yeah.
And that's a and okay, and that's the character from X essentially.
Yeah.
She really wants to be famous. She's pretty good at what she does. Like she's a good actress, right? Um,
She's
she's
got the
very
X factor. That's the whole
yes,
thing. That's why it's
yeah.
called X. She's got that X factor.
And
And
she's
that like
kind
we
of a
see
and
the
she's a
sign.
little bit of a bitch, right?
Yeah.
She's very competitive too, and she's like, "Fuck all these other bitches. I'm gonna get this part. You might as well go home." She's like trash talking them on her way out, which is very impolite. And like, okay, so that's her scene, right?
Yeah.
That's the whole character in a nutshell.
But in
And
the
then that
background, as
basically,
she's walking away, too, you see the sign that says "Show us your X Factor" outside the
mm,
thing, and like it's like, okay, perfect. We got the callback to the first movie. This is the character you're setting us up. This is what we're watching. MaXXXine from X, that person who fucking murdered the people who were trying to kill her in like brutal ways because she's gonna be famous, bitch. She's a fucking star. We're
yeah.
watching her do Los Angeles in 1985. That's what we're setting up for right now.
And the music comes in. It's great. There's a lot of fun, like wipes and transitions, and like a lot of stylistic tropes for the time that really, really work. Like the title on screen looks very 80s, all that sort of stuff. It knocks it out of the park.
Yeah.
Right from the beginning, I'm like, hell yeah, this is great. This is what I was hoping for out of this movie. Um, and it continues pretty okay for a little while. I don't remember exactly what happens next. If you do, jump in, but there's a couple
It's
things.
a pretty indulgent scene. I think almost the entirety of "Give Me All Your Lovin'" by ZZ Top plays
Is that
out.
them? Is that ZZ Top?
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Oh, it is ZZ Top.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
pretty indulgent, which is like again,
I like
it's
it.
I
I
like
thought
it a
it was
lot.
good.
It's setting up for something that does not pay off by the end. Is
True.
which like okay, well like you kind of get a sense of what it's going to be from those first couple scenes and from the opening credits that it just never gets back to by the end of the movie.
I
Um,
totally agree.
but what happens afterward is she she basically goes to the porn, like a porn studio or like a seedy club where they're filming porn in the back, and she's resuming, the career of working in, adult movies. Um, and one of her co-stars, her like colleagues, the other porn girls who she works with in Los Angeles, like is having trouble, like, yeah, getting the male talent in the porno to, to come. So like we get that scene, and then she's getting dressed. She does some cocaine at her dressing room at a table, and
He
the
opens up a little thing on her dressing table that has like a massive pile of
mountain
cocaine.
of cocaine. Like, it's
Yeah.
really, which is funny.
This is her everyday world. This is where we're starting, right?
Yeah, and then
she wants to do greater things, but she's a pretty famous and successful porn star.
yeah, and
And then
her friend invites her to a party in the hills that she got, like an after party full of rich people. She's like, oh, there's gonna be lots of rich guys there, and she's like, no, I've got to go to my other job, right? So not only are we getting that she is, confident, cocky, that she has, some real talent, and that, like, she's just indulgent in a lot of ways, with this cocaine mountain, right? She also works her ass off. So she's not just doing shows, like porn movies in the back of this seedy club or whatever she's doing. She also is working at a live peep show theater that she's going to. So like that's what we're establishing from these three.
She's working her ass off because she's gonna be famous no matter what.
Yeah.
And she's doing everything 100%. And it's like, no, I'm not gonna go to parties or whatever. I'm gonna keep working. I'm gonna keep doing my thing. And so there's a lot of different threads to follow here. One of them is that the girls that she was just talking to who go off to that party in the hills, they turn up dead.
Yes.
Right, so it's like, oh, what's going on? Who killed them? The first thought is the Night Stalker, because
because the Night Stalker is established in that like that ZZ Top indulgent credits scene. They show news footage of the Night Stalker, and they really hammer home like Night Stalker, Night Stalker, Night Stalker. This is happening during the Night Stalker. Boy, that Chekhov's gun, I'm sure, will go off.
In terms of expectations, I was kind of hoping this would pull a similar card, that it would do something similar to what Once Upon a Time in Hollywood did, where it kind of fictionalizes a real serial killer tragedy thing. That would have been interesting. That's a way to do it. Or like, because, okay, if you're going to incorporate the real Night Stalker killings and you're going to involve this fictional character, there's kind of two options you can do. Like, one is you could do something kind of like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood did with the Manson family, where these fictional characters, we change how it actually happened. One is that, like, maybe she has an encounter with the Night Stalker, but she gets away or something, but doesn't kill him or stop him or anything like that. And the other is what this movie did, which basically just has it happen in the background, and the Night Stalker himself doesn't really have any influence over the story at all. It's just kind of a mood setting thing.
Yeah.
There are killings that happen that are made to look like the Night Stalker did them, so they can, but really it's someone else doing them. That's all the connection to the Night Stalker really at all, which is kind of lame.
The movie also uses, so like in that same scene where it establishes the Night Stalker as an atmospheric mood setter, it also establishes that this is happening during the Satanic Panic era of pop culture. And it's a little silly that when I tell you that, like, we've established a physical figure, the Night Stalker, as, a potential antagonist for the movie, with the Satanic Panic in the background, right? And that it turns out that the Satanic Panic is the actual villain of the movie, and the Night Stalker is just the background, the background dressing, is kind of a bizarre move to pull. I don't know why you would do that. It's very abstract and kind of stupid. It ends up being a very lame choice, because you had a pretty strong promise there, and you didn't even try. You completely do a bait and switch.
And it's just thematically incoherent. Their motivation doesn't make any sense. There's a lot of ways we could try to break down this movie, but I'd like to pick a thread and then follow it all the way through to the end, and then move on to the other thread.
That sounds good.
Because it'll make it obvious just how lame all of these threads are in terms of their resolution. So we start some of her coworkers and acquaintances, porn stars, prostitutes, those types, they're turning up dead. They go to this producer's party in the hills and then they turn up dead. Usually with like a brand on their face of a pentagram, a satanic sort of pentagram symbol. So the detectives, Bobby Cannavale and whatever
That's
the other
Michelle Monaghan, isn't it?
Michelle, yes, they are looking into this case. They don't think it's the Night Stalker who's killing them because it's a different MO, but they're not really sure who's doing it. Eventually, they come to MaXXXine and they're like, "Hey, some of your friends keep turning up dead. Talk to us. Tell us what you know." And she doesn't help them, which is a choice that I quite like based on her character as established in X and MaXXXine. There's a strong moment later in
Yes.
the movie where she's talking to one of the female detectives and she's like these women need help or whatever, like you can help them, you can help the next girl, and she's like maybe they should learn to help themselves. I did. And she
Yeah.
walks away and I'm like that's a really interesting choice that like she's very self-interested, right? She wants to be famous. That's her goal. She's not going to let anything get in her way. She was willing to kill to make sure that didn't get in her way in the past. She saved herself, and she kind of looks down on women who are killed by like
Yes.
serial killers and stuff like that because they're weak essentially in her mind. And I think that's a really strong choice for this character that she just immediately flips on in like two scenes.
Yeah.
Like it's a scene or two later, and she's already like, maybe I should go try and help them and figure out what's going on here. It's like, why? That should you had the great thing. You had the really nice character moment with her where you're like, oh, she's kind of cutthroat and not sympathetic, not empathetic, whatever you would say. And I
Yeah.
like that choice. And then
Me
it's
too.
just nope, never mind.
Yeah, actually, maybe we do need her to be like a heroic figure here, because but like it's because I think that in that instance, it's because he sort of wrote himself into a corner. I want to say, like
Yeah.
he had her like in character. She's going to deny helping the police in this instance, right?
Yeah.
And then at like out of no like basically just because the story needs her to, she ends up deciding, actually maybe I should be a hero, maybe I should be the hero of the story. Like there's other ways you can make this work, right, where you
Yeah.
give her that sort of like characteristic from the past, that she's cutthroat and ruthless and she looks out for number one, and number
Yeah.
one is her, and nothing's gonna get in her way. But like we've already established that whoever's doing this is specifically doing it to get to her, right?
Yeah.
So like have it come, like she basically goes, fuck it, I'm not gonna, like, it's not my problem, I'm not gonna go and try to help this out. Have it come after her, and she ends up getting into a personal one-on-one fight with it, or with like
Yeah.
some representation of it, and then she decides she has to go and move on. But instead, it's like it's presented as almost like, isn't it presented as sort of like a moral thing where like her friend gets killed, so now like the one that she actually cared about gets killed,
Yeah.
and so now it's personal, when it's just like that.
It's a bit like that. It's this there's this moment where she's like, fine, I guess I should go look into this. I
Yeah.
just don't think that quite works. I wish the story was more focused on her trying to become famous and like the degree to which she'll do horrible things to get there. That's
Yeah.
that's what I'm more interested in, and I felt like that's what they were setting up to a degree. Let's continue this plot line first, but I want to talk about Elizabeth Debicki and that whole making of the movie thing because that ended up being really lame too. Um, so her friends are turning up dead, and eventually it's revealed that it's her father that's killing these people because she's
Yeah.
her father who's mentioned very briefly in X. We see him on the television screen. All we learn in X about her father is that he's like a very um
He's a televangelist. He's one of those
yes.
like those Joel Osteen, like mega, not well, he's not really a mega church type, but he's like, he's a showman preacher.
Yes,
You
and he's
know,
going on the TV talking about the degeneracy of modern culture and all that sort of stuff. And so all we learn from X is that she comes from that sort of background and that she wants to be famous and be a porn star and all that sort of stuff. So she's coming from a very sort of repressed conservative background, and then she's going in the opposite extreme, right?
yeah.
That's all we need. Her father doesn't really come into the story at all. But in this movie, it's like, oh, the guy who's killing everybody, that's her dad. Remember her dad? I'm like,
Remember her dad from that those two brief scenes where he's on TV in the house. Yeah,
yeah, it's like, and what does it turn out that he's sort of leading the charge of the satanic panic, anti-Hollywood, anti-degeneracy, and the corruption of the youth, that sort of stuff. He's leading that cause, and him and his minions, and that really is the best word for them, even though that makes absolutely no sense. His minions are finding these women who are prostitutes and sex workers and porn stars and like trying to get them to repent, question mark, and
yeah.
if they don't, they kill them and brand them with the star of like the pentagram to make it look like they were killed by Satanists to do and then there's a middle step, and then the final step is profit. Like,
Yeah, the
like
final step is that he's making a movie, and the movie's going to be a big hit.
well, it's not even just making it's like he wants it to be a big hit because he wants it to like make an impact. So like, but like what he wants is to what, like, save the culture, save like
Who knows? Who fucking knows? It's very ambiguous, and it's a really lame way of exploiting. Like like I was saying, you set it up with the Night Stalker as a actual antagonistic force, right? There is a character behind it, and it's like it is natural. She is on like a porn star and stripper on the verge of a big break, and she is in in Los Angeles, wandering around the streets at night, appearing vulnerable during this time. And it is just a natural thing that like she's going to come into conflict with the Night Stalker, the next big villain in the MaXXXine, like serial like slasher movie, universe. And they're gonna duke it out, and she is gonna have to, she's gonna have to. He's gonna take a special interest in her, and she's gonna have to do some really fucked up stuff in order to try to become famous, right? To achieve her goal of becoming famous. That's what it's setting up, and then it has the Satanic Panic stuff in the background as a way of, like, sort of, I guess, giving a commentary on the state of the culture at that time.
It could have tied more into the movie she was making, because she's making a movie called
The Puritan. Yeah.
The Puritan 2, which was like an exploitation B movie about, the Salem witch trials, I guess, ostensibly. And so they're making some sort of sequel to that that's going to be, another sort of trashy B movie. And so they're being protested at the studio. Like, that could have factored in more there in terms of the pushback against the sort of trashy movies coming out of Hollywood, and all the sex
and like as she's like,
stuff.
if you're setting it up with like a Night Stalker antagonist, right? Like as she's doing this, and like eventually when it's revealed what she like, because you assume that it is eventually going to come to light, or at least some of what she's been doing. Throughout the course of a better version of this would be like revealed to the public, and it's going to cause some even bigger backlash against the movie that she's making. So now, not only is she, being chased by a serial killer, now the production that is going to make her a star, in her view, is in jeopardy as well because of what she's been doing throughout the thing. But
that would be so much better. That would be so much better, because one of the other threads in this movie that you've just hinted at is like the past like isn't done with her, right? I think that's
the Kevin Bacon thread.
Yeah, the Kevin Bacon thread. Well, kind of, yes, but that's what he represents, is like, oh, what happened in
Part of
X,
it is what his like part of his thread is where that's represented because
yes,
it changes in a really
yes,
stupid way. But
yes.
yeah,
But what happened? The events of X are still lingering. You know, they're following her around, haunting her in a sort of sense, and the idea that what that could jeopardize her future career is a really strong narrative thread. But he doesn't do that. He doesn't do that at all. The only reason that her past is following her is because her dad somehow found out about it, and he's the one trying to find her.
yeah.
Like that's it. The detectives aren't looking for her because the detectives are looking for the person who survived this, massacre, who maybe they think did it, maybe they think can answer questions about it. No, no, no. The detectives are only trying to get to MaXXXine because they want to know if she has any information about what happened to her friends. So that's kind of weak in a narrative sense. Kevin Bacon, you would think maybe he's the one, the private eye hired by some mysterious person. We don't know who because we don't see him for most of the movie, who was trying to find out what like trying to find Maxine because of her involvement in the events of the first movie. But that only ends up being because it's her dad, and her dad's just trying to find her. Period. Doesn't really want anything to do in terms of bringing her to justice or bringing to light what happened on the farm in the first movie. All he wants to do is find her, like the prodigal daughter or whatever, and be like, repent and I will save you. Like, I'm going to save the culture or
Well, but
whatever
like
from.
that's like his whole thing is like he's gonna do an exorcism, and
Yeah.
like if you have repent like, but when he gets to the exorcism, he doesn't really give her the opportunity to say anything. She's bound and gagged and tied up to a tree. He
Yeah.
he says to her, "Well, if you repent, then God will see it and won't let you be burned alive." So he's planning on just setting her on fire and like
Yeah.
hoping that it's gonna work out. Like it makes no fucking sense.
It makes no fucking sense. Also, all his goons with him, all his faceless goons who get shot in like a really lame shootout scene, by the way. Um,
Yeah.
all these faceless goons, ostensibly, these are all people who have also lost children to like the dark underbelly of
Yeah, their kids
Hollywood.
have gone and become OnlyFans models in 1985, and they're like,
Yeah,
God damn it, I really wish my daughter hadn't decided to do porn starting at 18. Oh
yeah,
boy,
run away and
what
try to go
villains.
become an actress and end up as a prostitute or something like
Yeah,
that. All
what?
those kind of stories. And
Yeah.
so like those people are the people that are sucked up into his movement where he's kind of railing against Hollywood and the culture and all that sort of stuff. And then what he's doing is just murdering those people. Like,
Yeah.
why are they all okay with it? Like, he has a team of people helping him. He's not doing it on his own. He has people helping him murder these prostitutes and these strippers and these porn stars and all that sort of stuff.
Who
Like,
represent their children.
yes, yes,
Yeah, which is like, because, and of course, like the reason that they do that, right, is because religion bad.
it's
That's
almost
the
that
reason.
cartoonish.
It's
Yeah,
almost that. It's all, yeah, like Christian man bad. Okay, that's like
yeah.
he's saying that's exactly why.
Essentially the big takeaway from the movie is like, okay, he likes showing the seedy underbelly of Hollywood. He likes recognizing that it exists. Oh, but the real problem are the people who are complaining about it. Like they're the real villains because for no reason at all they're willing to just murder all these people in order to fix it.
Yeah.
It
Oh
doesn't
my god.
make any
And
sense.
just wait until we get to like the very ending of the movie, because like that is a whole other thing that like I have no idea what it thought it was doing. No idea what he thought he achieved by the end of this fucking movie. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, but okay,
real quick
so
for the super chat,
yeah.
Metal Face Rosie, thank you very much for the super chat. Says new Lindsay Ellis video. I didn't realize she was back. Defending Yoko ends with random defense of Amber Heard. Look at the top comments, and our old friend Maggie Mayfish is there. What? Not.
Well,
I can't say I'm
they're
surprised.
the Nebula crowd is what you could call them, I suppose. So Lindsay Ellis has been, she's like, oh, I'm quitting YouTube. She's been on Nebula, still making videos
Oh,
there
got it. Okay.
behind a paywall, essentially. And apparently, she just made a new video on YouTube. She's back, and better than ever. I saw that it was about Yoko. I saw that it was hella long, and I was like, no, I'm not gonna watch that. Um, I'm not really of the opinion that it's Yoko's fault the Beatles broke up. Simultaneously, Yoko is really cringe, so I don't
Yes.
know. Like, I don't really care to watch a defense of her, especially if it's gonna end with defending Amber Heard. That seems that's
Yeah.
I don't think that's actually a flattering comparison. If you're trying to defend Yoko Ono, maybe don't compare her to Amber Heard,
Yeah.
actually. I don't know, just a thought.
Yeah.
But yes,
So
thank you for
anyway,
this. So that thread in a nutshell, um, Maxine's friends are turning up dead because her dad is trying to get to her and is killing a whole bunch of other people who he should see as victimized by the excesses of culture and all that sort of stuff, and the LA machine that's just like grinding people to death and all that sort of stuff. But he's just killing them himself to try to make it look like the Night Stalker is doing it. Why? I don't know. His ultimate goal is to make a movie about how he saved his daughter, but it really seems like he's just going to burn her at the stake, and I don't understand what his motivation is or why any of these goons are helping him. That's one thread, right? The other thread we can talk more in depth about now is the past coming back to haunt her, right? We talked about all the ways that it could have been interesting. Instead, Kevin Bacon's like, hey, I know something happened at that Texas ranch. We should talk. Meet me here. And she doesn't want to talk to him because, like, I don't know. What does he want? Who knows? He's a private eye. He's a little shady.
he's got that very over the top New Orleans accent. He's got a couple of gold teeth. He ends up at one point looking like basically wearing the same costume as Jack Nicholson does in Chinatown, which is just like,
I don't like that.
I don't like that at all. Like, if you're gonna reference that, at least give it some actual punch. You're like, yeah, we get it. You're very well read in terms
well
of
watched.
well watched in terms of classics of
I can't wait
Hollywood.
to talk about the Psycho House in Bates Motel. I hate it so much. But Kevin Bacon is, he's the seedy private eye after her. He knows something about what happened in the first movie, and he's trying to get her to meet with his client. He's like, look, I don't really care what you talk about. I'm just here to connect you two. That's my job. I don't really care what happened to you. And so he's like, go meet at this place. And it's the same place where all those women were going missing. Oh, my goodness.
Oh, well, I mean, okay, so we've had two of her friends, her other porn star prostitute, stripper type friends, who have disappeared after going to a party in the hills. They have said that out loud to her in like just straight up said like, oh yeah, party in the hills, rich guys. They've said it back to back within like 10 minutes of screen time, right? Like we have been inundated with this information. And then Kevin Bacon shows up and gives her an address and says, go to this place. And it is like, it is an address in the hills is essentially what he says, right? It's like an address in the hills. This is where my client is, right? And then later on in the movie, after she has because he wrote it on an envelope and she doesn't go, right? She's like, fuck that. Why would I do that? Go get fucked. And then even after she has, taken on the, the aspect of the justice writer, right? Like after she has become the hero of the story, she still like looks at that envelope with that address on it, crumples it up and throws it away first, and then immediately goes back to it and goes, wait a minute, and looks at the address. And we get a flashback to those scenes where those girls have told us, like, oh yeah, we're going to a party in the hills full of rich guys. There's a party in the hills. How stupid does this guy think the audience watching his movie is? Like,
pretty stupid.
Pretty fucking stupid.
Because when she threw it away, I thought that was basically her character saying, like, no, I thought she made that connection because I made that connection because I was watching the movie and paying attention. I'm not exceptionally bright, but I noticed, right?
Yeah.
I assumed she noticed as well and was just not interested.
Yeah,
because there's because we even get a scene that she's not interested, but then later she's like, "Wait a minute!" I'm like, "Oh, you didn't know?" Like it makes Maxine kind of stupid by implication as well, not just the audience for including that flashback. Like, hey, in case you weren't paying attention. Yeah, so that's pretty lame. Okay, the thread of the past isn't done with you yet. There's a couple good things that it creates. There's one where they're making a mold of her face for this movie because they're going to do some sort of practical effect with the face. And so they're making a mold and they have to like surround her entire face. And so they give her little holes to breathe, but it's very claustrophobic and she can't see and all that sort of thing. And she has to sit there for 5 minutes while the mold hardens or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, it's like 10 minutes or something like that. And like
Yeah,
don't they normally when you do that like they put straws in your nostrils so that you can like you're
I would
unimpeded?
assume so.
Because like
They
he doesn't do that, or the special effects artist who's making the mold doesn't do that, and so it's like it's a really creepy visual of her, like her mouth and her nose being plugged up by this
that
like
doesn't
goop.
it doesn't make any
But
sense.
like they
Yeah,
wouldn't have done that.
yeah, I
Like,
agree. You could just have the nose straws or whatever, and the scene would have been just as effective
yeah,
otherwise. So I don't know why but like they put all that goop on her face, and the way it's kind of like dripping down, kind of looks like decaying old age makeup. So there's a little callback to the first movie, and then while she's sitting in the sort of dark claustrophobic abyss with this giant thing on her face, she starts having flashbacks to the events of the first movie. And I really like that because I kind of like the implication that she's thrown herself into her work and everything she's doing to become famous and be successful, that she's kind of left that in the past, and it's only in moments like this, like where
like
she's
she's
forced to
forced
just
to sit and be silent by herself for a
in the
while.
dark,
Yeah,
yeah, and that it comes flooding back. I like that choice, and I like the way we intercut little tense moments from the first movie. That was nice. So in terms of the past isn't done with you yet, Maxine, that's a nice little detail. But ultimately, yeah, the past is totally done with her, essentially. Nothing from the first movie actually has any ramifications because the guy that's after her isn't concerned about the events of the first movie. He's just trying to find her, period. Like he knows she's a famous porn star. It's not like he's only after her because of what happened in the first movie. So the first movie is kind of irrelevant ultimately.
yeah. You don't. That was one of the things that kind of you don't need to have seen the first movie to know, yeah, like to understand what's going on here. Yeah, like
Well, only because it's poorly written, I would
yeah,
say.
and well, only because it's poorly written. But like, you also do need to have seen the first movie to know who the fuck the priest like that her
Yeah.
dad is a priest who is looking for her, because you would like unless you watched and paid very close or not very close attention, but like you have to remember that her dad is on TV in those two brief scenes in the first movie to even recognize the reveal of who he is. It's like
Yeah.
otherwise it's just like, oh, who, like, oh, okay, there's some guy here, and then like he does a little monologue and reveals like, oh yeah, you're my daughter. Like, oh, right, yeah,
Cool. Lame,
cool.
thanks. It's pretty lame in that regard as well. So it doesn't really make any use of the past is shadowing her thread. Let's see, what are the other threads? One of the other major threads is that she's making a movie, right? So she gets her big break, that audition from the very beginning of the movie. She gets a call back, and so or she gets hired essentially.
Yeah.
The director, played by Elizabeth Debicki, who's very tall, she she is a very kind of self-serious director who wants she's making this B movie that's the sequel to a trashy horror film exploitation film called
Puritan.
the Puritan. Is going to be the Puritan too, but no, she wants to go above and beyond. She wants to make a B movie with A ideas, which I know for a fact that that's what Ty West thinks he did here.
Yes.
He didn't.
Now,
I'm afraid this movie. I'm not sure it even has ideas, to be frank. But we'll talk more about that when we get to the themes.
it definitely thinks it does. It's just that like by the end, it's very murky as to what it thinks those ideas
Yeah.
are. You know.
We're going to come back to that conversation, so that'll come back to what this movie thinks about
Yeah,
religion
real
and
quick,
conservatism
too.
and
Sorry, yeah.
all that sort of stuff. Go ahead.
Well, real quick, I wanted to just like talk about the first movie X has a little bit of an exploration of some deeper ideas, right, with Jenna Ortega's character. Now, Jenna Ortega's character in that movie is a tag along who's very young, who comes along with her smarmy. He's the sound guy, right? The smarmy.
He's the sound guy. He's the cinematographer.
Okay, the technical man for the porno, who espouses these ideas about how like porn is, people talk shit about porn and all this, but like really it's not any different than any other movie, and and then and Jenna Ortega's his girlfriend, and he's very into her, he wants to work together with her, and he a particular idea of her. And as she listens to him and the rest of the people who he's working with talk about the ideas of like, oh, porn can be art as well, and porn shouldn't
And it's
be looked down upon.
empowering and all
It's
that.
empowering and all that. She decides she wants to be in the porno, and he has a crisis where he's just like, wait a minute, what? Like, where his values are immediately thrown on, like, into question when somebody that he actually cares for and who he respects as a person decides that she wants to do this on camera, right? That she wants to, become a porn star, essentially, because of some half-baked ideology that he's been sort of throwing out with no practical experience, right? And so there's a little exploration of what, like, it's very shallow, don't get me wrong, but there's a little exploration of what that does to him in that first movie. There's a little bit of going over like, oh, well, what
Do you really mean that?
do
Like,
you really, yeah, do you really
when the
think
rubber
this? Like,
meets the road?
yeah, like when the rubber meets the road, how well does this hold up? Like, do you really believe that? And then they all start getting fucking killed. So, like, we've got the little bit of the moral, the moral comeuppance in a way of, what they're doing. But, like, they're also portrayed as people. There's more exploration of that in the first movie that he just completely disregards in this one. It's out the window. It's completely out the window. And essentially what he gets at from this is porn is moral. And so is doing cocaine. And there's not really any downside to it. Is essentially where we're going to end up by the end of the movie, which is a bizarre choice.
It's basically like, it's not perfect, the world, the culture as it is, with all the sort of, because he treats it like a seedy underbelly.
Yeah.
But simultaneously, the real villains are the ones who are upset. It's very odd. And we'll get even more in depth with that at the very end of the movie. But Daily Dose says, it's so crazy to me that Ty is just the guy who films the porn in X. That is actually not the director, but he does look a lot like the actor who plays the guy who films the porn in X. Make of that what you will. Very, very, they do look quite similar. It's pretty funny. Don't see the appeal of Ortega. I mean, I think she's a pretty good actress, but I'm not,
yeah,
like,
I'm not
hyper obsessed with her like some people are.
I think she's fine.
Yeah, I think she's good in the movie. She's good in X, Anywho, and I really thought X was making fun of the camera guy when he's trying to give direction, but the guy says, "Shut up, I'm fucking here." But I guess that was an accident. There's a lot of funny stuff in X.
Yeah.
I didn't find Pearl or MaXXXine as funny.
Yeah, there is some funny stuff in MaXXXine.
And I think that's a little lame. There's a couple laughs in MaXXXine.
Yeah, there's some chuckles, there's some fun to be had somewhere. Most of it is front-loaded.
X is almost funny enough to be a comedy, in a sense.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I think that's definitely why it has so much appeal, right? Is that it feels like a parody. Like
a little bit, yeah.
It's interesting. I do like that line where he says, "Shut up, I'm fucking here," while he's trying to give him, in-depth direction. I think that's a really funny line. He's brought up a good point. But anyway, moving forward to MaXXXine here.
So we've done the thread of the girls who are going missing. Is it the night stalker? No, it's actually just her dad. The past is the past catching up with her. Actually, no, it's just her dad.
Yeah. I mean, like, we also have that, like, there's also
to the
in addition to the other
movie,
bits
right?
of the past catching up to her, right? Is like she hallucinates seeing Pearl in the window of the psycho house, which like distracts her from listening to the director, who is like kind of, she's very exacting. She's treating what she's doing with this like heightened sense of importance that I guess puts Maxine off her game, which is weird because
I don't no,
viewed
I don't think any of their relationship makes sense. Let's talk
out.
about it. So she gets the job in this movie and she's like, "Oh, this is gonna be my big break." She's talking with her friend who works at the video store, who I like. Like their relationship works for me pretty well. I think it's
Yeah.
interesting that the only person that she actually has a friendship with is a guy, because she kind of has this kind of condescending attitude to other women who she sees as weak and in her way, in a sense. But there's this guy who's not in her way and isn't trying to fuck her, as he says,
Yeah.
who likes movies and is obsessed with movies and the power of movies. And so she kind of bonds with him. She's the only real friend she has. I like that choice. So she comes to him when she's like, "I got the part. I'm going to be fucking famous," and he's excited for her and all that
Yeah.
sort of stuff. And so she shows up on set, right? But they don't start making the movie. They don't really start making the movie until the end of the movie. I think that was a horrible choice. Um, I, for one, am a big fan of movies about making movies, because I'm really interested in those. I like the process of making movies. I find it interesting. I liked that opening scene with the audition. She doesn't get to do any acting in the movie at all, period. That was a waste.
Yes.
But
Absolutely. And like it's interesting because why
I was
wouldn't you?
really what we were setting up when she's having these one-options with yeah, exactly. I don't know. It's so lame. What they're setting up was with Elizabeth Debicki's director character is someone who's very exacting, like you said, very self-serious and very like, I need you to commit 100% to this role. And so I'm envisioning when we're setting this stuff up that she's gonna have her kind of go method, essentially, that we're gonna play around with that sort of thing, like how far you'll go for the sake of this role, and she kind of pushes her into a direction that gets more and more extreme and a bit ugly. We'll see like
Yeah.
how cutthroat she really is from this director who like kind of, I like the idea that the director kind of falls in love with her too, like, oh my God, here's this actor that'll do anything for me, right?
Yeah,
Um,
that would have been, wouldn't that have been more interesting? Wouldn't that have been like, and so she needs to commit 100% to the role. Not only is the past like the ramifications of what she did in X catching up to her, like there's the unresolved trauma, or like fact that she was never found and that people were looking for the murderer and everything. The Night Stalker being out there, right? Like we get the Night Stalker in there, and like she's ruthless. She's being told she needs to be, at the top of her ruthless game in order to, make sure this movie gets made properly. And then
yeah.
she's coming up against another murderer, and like who's taking a special interest in her. Like that would have been the movie, right? Like there you go. Now you've got three threads that are all strung together, kind of like they're playing off of each other, and we're now we've
Everything's
got a little bit of
conspiring
conflict.
to ruin this opportunity for her to become famous, right?
Yes.
And she's got to go to more and more extreme lengths to ensure that that doesn't happen. I like the idea of kind of turning her more into the antagonist or something like an antagonist,
Yeah.
That would be interesting to me. And I especially like the idea of like pushing how far she'll go for the sake of this director, like you could have some fun stuff playing around with like the whole, ethos of method acting and all that sort of stuff. There's all sorts of things you can do. They waste all of that, especially with making the movie. The only time we get to see her with the director is like before the movie even starts, on a day where they're not even filming her scenes yet. You know what I mean? Like it's a waste, and Mia Goth gets to do basically nothing in these scenes, but get like driven around in a little golf cart around the studio lot and be like, oh, look at all these movies that are getting made. Like she's talking about what her plan is for the movie. Mia Goth just gets to sit there and do nothing really. Like she shows a lot of confidence and that X factor in the opening audition, but then in all the scenes with the director, she's kind of meek and just kind of sits there quietly while the director talks. You know what I mean? I feel like you would want her to be a bit more,
Yeah, like, active, because for whatever
yeah.
reason she's completely thrown off by the presence of the director, and she just doesn't, she stops feeling like herself immediately. It's like
Doesn't make
she's
any
an
sense.
animal in a in a corner, like at this point in the movie, and for a good portion of it, like right all the way up until the end, where in a very unnatural way it sort of resolves itself, which I didn't like even a little bit. But like she stops being the character that the character from X that we know. We don't see that character becoming more extreme. We see that character taking a step backwards and like
Yeah.
losing a lot of what makes it interesting, what makes that character interesting, and then just like randomly getting it back towards the end because the plot needs it to happen at that moment, right? Like it's the end of the third act. This is where the resolution come in, but it's not. It's really it doesn't do like and Kevin Bacon's character also like plays into that, into that because she as she's touring around the set with the director who's telling her she needs to be 100% committed. She brings her up to Bates Motel set, and she has that moment of hallucinating that the old woman is staring at her from the window of the house, which is like I guess it's okay, but like it doesn't really feel like where the movie was promising to go in that opening sequence. It's a little bit of a weird twist. And then so like let's talk about Kevin Bacon's PI motivation, right? Like he tells her that he doesn't really care what she does. She just, needs to go. Like his job is to set his client up with her and to get them talking, right? Like he doesn't really care what happens and all that. He's there to do a job.
He gets paid either way, yeah.
He gets paid either way. But then he like completely he will not he harasses her and stalks her and will not leave her alone, which is like it's not really achieving his goal, right? Like that's not what the character that's not what he's setting out.
No, because to be very specific, he found her on behalf of Maxine's father, delivered the message that says, "Hey, come to the house in the hills to meet with your dad." So he already did his job. He got the message to her. He found her. We'll see scenes that the dad is like stalking her as well.
Yeah.
So he knows where she is. Why he doesn't just confront her somewhere or kidnap her with her goons. I don't know why he doesn't do any of that. He seems
why does he
oddly
need to
insistent
lure
on
her to the house? Yeah,
luring her to the house. I don't know why, but Kevin Bacon has done his job, essentially. I suppose maybe he doesn't get paid until she shows up there, but that was a stupid deal, but maybe that's the only reason he's still invested in it. But it's odd because he's basically still stalking her and like and so like where things take a turn with him is when Maxine notices that Kevin Bacon's still following her, and so she puts her keys in her hand and like fucking punches him, like stabs him in the face with the keys.
Like he's parked behind her with he's driving behind her with a video camera, and he's recording her the whole time, right? And so she puts her keys in her hand, in her fist, sticking out like a pair of Wolverine claws. And she walks up to him, and he doesn't seem to realize what's about to happen. He's kind of just like cracking jokes and everything. He's like, just think of me as the paparazzi. I'm gonna. And she just walks up to him and just starts beating the shit out of him, like punching him in, like it is just straight up punching him in the face, and like with the key, which is like the face and throat, beating the shit out of him. And this
he doesn't react in a way that makes sense to me. I found that very distracting. Like he's oddly, I don't know, passive about it. Like he's being stabbed.
Yeah.
And his reaction didn't work for me at all. I can't
his
remember
reaction
exactly
was just basically kind of go like, you bitch, I'll get you for this. Like that's basically that's what he does, which is like really lame.
He could like smack the door out, you know what I mean, and hit her. Like he would go after. None of it worked for me.
No.
That scene. Like the sudden, the only thing that works about that maybe is that she's kind of that hot-headed that she would do that, but also it's in broad daylight and like I don't know, I didn't like that scene.
Yeah, and it's in broad daylight and it's like it's on the set, so it's on the lot, so there are people around. Yeah, first off, he got into the lot, which that happens quite a bit, where it's like he just ends up on the studio lot somehow.
Even
And
though there's ostensibly security, I don't know how he keeps getting in. Whatever.
well,
It
and
seems like
the
multiple.
security ejecting him from the lot is what saves her later
Yeah,
when she's
yeah.
facing him down. Which, and to like, let's talk about a little bit too. So somebody mentioned the ball crushing scene where
Hmm.
like she's being followed down an alley by some weirdo. Who you think maybe maybe the Night
Oh, is
Stalker.
it the Night Stalker? No,
Yeah,
it's a
no,
Bustin.
it's a
It's a
Buster
bus.
Keaton.
It's a rapey Buster Keaton impersonator. Just apropos of nothing, just shows up in the movie, like flicks out a switchblade, like I'm gonna
Yeah.
get you.
Well, and okay, so like to be fair, when I thought that the Night Stalker was still going to make an appearance later in the movie, I was okay with this, right? Like
Yeah,
I was
no,
okay with this being like, okay, it's a little bait and switch. Actually, this is just some rando who's been like because oh, LA's a dangerous place. There's tons of weirdos out here, but the big bad weirdo is like Maxine can handle herself against the little guys, but
yeah,
how's she gonna do against the big bad weirdo who's running around town killing people and murdering
I
the
agree.
people that she knows? And what like what she does here is basically shows off that she shows off the character from X, right? Like she's being stalked by
Yes,
somebody who's a creepy murderer, and
I
she
kind of
turns
like
around
this
and
scene.
turns. Yeah, I like it too. She turns around and she's a bigger badass than him, right? Like she's
Yeah,
worse than him. She makes him strip naked. She makes him deep throat her gun. Then she makes him lie down on the like pavement, and she crushes his balls with her high heel. Like perfect.
yeah,
That's Maxine. There we
it's
go.
good, and it's surprisingly graphic, which
That
sets
was
up
just
sort
pretty
of
fun.
a standard of gore in the movie that is pretty good throughout, except for in like the final
Yeah,
conflict. It gets kind of a lame generic shootout. When we were having fun with the kills in the beginning of the movie. Yeah, and it's a fairly strong scene. It's the character from X, right? Well established that just kind of disappears. It's so crazy to me that she doesn't end up as the antagonist or something like it in this movie. I feel like that's the obvious direction you go with this.
yeah,
Instead of making her more extreme, they just walk her back, which is really lame. Really lame. Like how many people she'll kill to become famous because
that
she's already
was
done it in the past, and like how many more people will, because and the other thing is, okay, so let's continue the Kevin Bacon through line, right? Because this will relate to where Kevin Bacon's story ends up. Kevin Bacon gets stabbed in the face when he's behind her in line at the studio lot. I don't like that she does that. I like the level of violence, but it just seemed like really ill-advised.
yeah. Well,
Like,
and where's her gun?
where's her
Where'd
gun?
her
Yeah,
gun disappear to for the rest of the movie? Where's her gun?
that's another good question. Because she had it in
Yeah,
that first scene for self-defense and everything. Um, I don't like the way she handled Kevin Bacon there, but okay, now Kevin Bacon is mad at her. That's why he's still around, ostensibly. He's like, I'm gonna
I'm
get you
gonna
now
get you now.
because you stabbed me in the face with your keys. And I went, stop it. That's mean. Don't do that. And then he shows up on the lot again one day
As
when
she's just
she's,
strolling around, like so she is strolling around during production hours, where like she is going to be the star of this movie, and they for whatever reason are not keeping track of where she is. Fine, whatever. I guess maybe it's like it's B movie, sure. This director has been shown to be a bit of a stickler, so you would think that she would at least be trying to be aware of where her star is and what time is being managed. But fine. But he
but she
shows
has,
up dressed like
yeah.
Jake from fucking Chinatown with a
Yeah,
pistol.
get it
In
because he got stabbed in the face, so now he's got a bandage on his nose, so he looks like Jake from Chinatown. Do you get it? Have you seen Chinatown?
If you haven't seen Chinatown, you won't get it.
He's seen movies. That's
Yeah,
what
it's
there's a
funny
decent.
because there's oh god, what was the I was uh just reading a book. It's basically like it was the filmmaker's eye, right? It's basically a cinematography textbook, and it's a really interesting read if you're at all fascinated like I am by like how like, what camera angles say what psychologically about characters at what times, that kind of thing, and when what the rules generally are and when to break them and that sort of thing. But in that book, the guy talks about how he went to see a student film where the student film director didn't really like he filmed it all in his dorm room, but he didn't do it like so the dorm room is just super messy, and it's a film about like a couple arguing about like they're having the first big fight of their relationship, and so like but the room is messy and he hasn't done any like set deck or all that, and so people are asking him like, well, why do you have a stack of Xbox games there in the corner? Because she's mad because he won't stop buying video games, and he's like, no, those were just there. It's like, oh, why do you have a poster from Chinatown in the corner over there? Is it because you want to reference that? No, that was just there. And then it's just like, oh, and that scene at the end where they walk down the alley, was that a reference to Reservoir Dogs? It's like, yeah, I'm glad you caught that. Oh, why did you reference Reservoir Dogs there? I I thought it looked nice. And that was it is just like that's what I got from Kevin Bacon dressed as Chinatown is like
Yeah,
he didn't
it's
think why he would be doing it. He just thought it would be a fun little reference to throw in there, you know?
and it's the kind of thing that it's just a little superficial detail. And if everything else was good, I'd be like, this is a fun
And
little
I guess it's
detail.
kind of
It's
fun. I
fine.
guess it's kind of a cute callback, sure. Yeah, but like
I
the
guess,
rest
but
like
there's no
how it
real
comes about is like
connection
why is he
otherwise.
doing this? And like
Yeah.
it's the middle of the day, and then he shows up on the lot with a pistol, and this is where the movie like immediately like as soon as this happened I was like, oh, this movie has no idea where it's going.
Absolutely.
It's completely lost. It's spiraling out of control
He
because
just starts chasing her around the lot, an
yeah,
empty studio, like city street set, and they're just chase. It's a long chase scene. She's running away from him. There's a couple scrapes that she manages to get away, and then she runs to the
the
house
Psycho
from
House.
Psycho, which was established briefly earlier when Elizabeth Debicki's director character is giving her a tour of the lot, and she's like, "Hey, you see that? That's the Psycho house. That's Bates Motel from Psycho." And I'm like, why is this here? I don't know. It doesn't have anything to do with what they're talking about. She sees the old lady in the window, and it's like, okay, okay. So we get the whole like that old lady is following her around. But before we continue, I want to acknowledge a good comment in the chat from Quantum Ranger Power who said, if they had the old lady appear more often, it could have been the lingering fear of failure. She would become the fear that she would become that old lady if she doesn't succeed, what drives her to greater extremes to avoid
Yeah.
all that.
What
And
a
that's kind of what they set up in the beginning, right? Because I mean, the old lady, well, that's Pearl. Sorry, Pearl and Maxine are similar, which is why they're played by the same character in X. There's
yeah.
something there. They have a lot in common in terms of how desperate they are to be famous and successful and loved and beautiful and all of those things, right? So Pearl becomes a serial killer, right? So you'd think maybe Maxine would sort of become something of a serial killer also, or at least,
Yeah.
killing more than in just self-defense. You think that would be where they're going with this because they have so much in common. No, no. That
Why wouldn't you do that though? It's like she wants to do anything she can to be famous, and like why not? Like you have the setup right here, right? Why not have it be that she kills so many people that she becomes like the most infamous serial killer of all time in your universe? Why wouldn't you do that?
or something along those lines. Yeah, like a trail of blood follows her, and then eventually it catches up to her, like right when she's on the cusp of becoming famous, she ruins it all, or something like
Yeah.
that. That would be interesting. I would have liked this movie if it ended a bit more tragically, but even if it has a
It,
like she gets away with it ending, I'd
you
still
can
want to
do
go
that
in that
better than what you
direction.
did here, like yeah,
They
well,
tone her down. It's the opposite.
and
It's the opposite.
what is okay, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit here because I really do want to ask a question about this, like what the ending where they like do that rug pull where you think that's what it's going to do is right is like becomes she gets so close to making it to being famous, and then her like murderous in like rage is going to fuck it up for her, right? Like they
Mhm.
show you at the end, as she's like staring her dad in the face with a shotgun essentially in his mouth, right? Like she's got the shotgun pointed at him, and there's a helicopter over top, and she like it's telling her drop the gun, Maxine, it's over, right?
Yeah.
And then they have a flash forward to like this insane, unrealistic like idea of how successful her Puritan 2 movie is, right? Where
Yeah.
everybody thinks she's super famous and oh my god, you're so great for having defeated the big bad villain that you like, not the Night Stalker, because the Night Stalker we're going to show him getting arrested in separate news footage. But in other news, this porn star killed another serial killer in Los Angeles. Lame,
Hmm.
by the way. But
Yeah.
either way, like we've got that flash forward. She gets to like the Chinese theater and everybody's chanting her name, and then they interview her and they're like, how does it feel to be the biggest star on the face of the planet, and what are you going to do next?" And then like they hold the microphone out and she has her speech about don't give up, and then it does the rug pull where it's like, "Oh, that was all hallucination. She's actually still here, blinded by the spotlight of the helicopter floating above her," right? And then she shoots her dad, and then it goes a month or like 1 month later again, and actually no, it turns out fine. She's in the movie, she's gonna be a star. There's nothing like, why even do that? Why even do the fake out?
I don't know. It's a very good question because you would think that by killing him so publicly, this is the 80s, there might have been cameras. There are probably cameras on that helicopter, perhaps. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Even if there isn't, like, this would definitely tarnish her ability to become a famous movie star, right? That she's even involved in this case. You know what I mean?
yeah.
But it has no effect at all. And so the bait and switch flash forward that ends up not being real is even more confusing and worthless. Just like what are you even trying to say? It's a terrible choice. It's a terrible choice.
Yeah, and
Even if they ended it in a way that made a bit more sense, I would still feel like they wasted a lot of the potential inherent in like seeing how far she's willing to go.
yeah.
She's very passive and reactive in the back half of this movie. It's lame.
Yeah, and I'm just going to address Matt Lentini in the chat, who said he has not. He watched Pearl this morning. He hasn't seen X in a while. Her husband in Pearl, who shows up at the end of Pearl to find the entire murdered family, that is Howard. And no, I don't think they ever explain like why he's cool with her having killed his sister and her own parents.
No.
They just like, that is sort of what you want to see from Pearl, but like he comes home and he finds like all these bodies in the house that he's supposed to be living in, and then like flash forward 50 years, they're an old couple who are having problems sexually, and that's why her repressed sexuality sort of drives her a little bit, even like a little bit nuts and back into serial killer, I guess.
It's not a great prequel. It
No,
really
it's
isn't.
really not.
It's not a great prequel. It's got some of those problems and how it doesn't quite line up. But then also Maxine is just way worse as a sequel.
Yeah.
So I really do think they get worse with each installment. But Pearl has redeeming qualities that Maxine just doesn't. But they're equally messy, and you can't blame it on like, oh, we threw it together really quick so we could make it at the same time. We had a couple of years on this one. Still, this story is in tatters. I
Yeah.
really think it's lame. Let's continue the Kevin Bacon story. So he's chasing her around
In broad daylight, in the middle
in
of like in
the
the middle of
studio lot,
of production hours on the film on the studio lot, and instead of like running into the room she just came out of, where like the rest of her crew would be, she takes off to the most isolated part of set, or of the lot, I guess, for some
which is
reason.
the house from Psycho, and she runs into that like, oh, this will be safe. It's like it's a terrible idea. She has quite a lead on him. She doesn't need to hide.
Yeah.
Right. He's not like catching up to her any second. So she runs into the house, which is probably an even worse example of the sort of slasher cliche of like running upstairs, you know, which you see in a lot of slasher movies and it's been memed quite a bit since, but this is even worse than that. And I kind of couldn't believe that they did that. It makes Maxine pretty stupid. She's supposed to be pretty. She can handle herself. That's kind of the whole deal with her,
Yeah.
right? Is that she can handle herself, and where's her gun for one thing?
Where's her
Um,
gun?
but
Why
she
doesn't
runs
she
into
try to like get like she's got a lead on him and she knows the lot a little bit better than him clearly because she can, dodge through, she knows where to run through certain parts of the set and everything and then like why doesn't she like wait around a corner and try to get the jump on him? She's supposed to be like
yeah,
that's her whole thing. Is like she's supposed to be
she's tough,
tough. She's
but
she's a killer. She is a killer.
yeah, but no, not in this scene. She runs very stupidly into the psycho house. I'm like, what are we doing? She goes in there, and it's not even like a real house. It's just the facade of the house, right? And so Kevin Bacon is about to come into the house and get her because she's just standing right there. She hasn't hidden at all. She hasn't tried to find an exit. She's just sitting in the psycho house. And then, just then, a security guard is like, hey, you can't be over here. Kevin Bacon's like, oh, okay.
And he leaves.
I'll leave. And that's the end of that scene. Utterly worthless. That whole sequence. Everything to do with the psycho house is only here to be like,
Doesn't
look,
it sort of resemble the house from X? Doesn't it sort of resemble the house that we used?
she saw the old woman in the window. That's kind of like when you saw the figure in the window in Psycho. I've seen Psycho. Do you remember Psycho?
Yeah.
Worthless. It does nothing. Goes
Yeah.
nowhere. It makes her stupid by implication. It's incredibly contrived. It adds nothing. Cut it from the movie. It's so bad. Why would you write that? It's terrible. So next time we see Kevin Bacon, Maxine is at a club dancing or something like that.
Yeah, she's
and
put on
Kevin
her
Bacon-
like war paint and she's gone out like it's framed as like well so she goes to her agent, which is Gus Fring, and
Mhm.
he's also her entertainment lawyer, but she reveals to him I guess she reveals to him everything. She tells him everything that she did. Like I don't know. It's either she only reveals that she punched Kevin Bacon with the keys, or she told him that she murdered some people in Texas and also punched Kevin Bacon in the face with some keys. Um,
Yeah, because the other detail we haven't mentioned yet is that she received a tape in the mail from her dad, who knows where she lives, by the way. So why Kevin Bacon's even still involved, I don't know. But the tape is footage that I guess was recovered from the crime scene of
it's
the
of the
porn
porno that they were
shooting,
making. Yeah,
which they didn't get to finish, remember? So he had to go process this film footage, which is pretty funny. So, but it's footage
and he
from
put
the
it on a
porn.
VHS tape, which like it
Yeah,
had to have been pretty recent because I don't think VHSs were a thing in 1979.
yeah, so that's okay. So that's she probably mentions all of it to him. That's the vibe I got. But it could just be, hey, there's a private eye who's after me,
Oh,
and
on
I
VHS.
assaulted him. Oh, it was okay. Well, God, don't you feel stupid?
A little bit, man. Man, I don't know this obsolete video technology release date. Boy, howdy!
Yeah,
I'm a
you
fake
idiot.
I'm a fake nerd.
You're a fake film nerd. What do you even know about movies? But I got the vibe that she told him everything, because if she just said, hey, there's a private eye who's following me, I assaulted him in broad daylight in public. Will you go kill him for me? I'm not sure that he would have done it. You know,
That doesn't. Yeah, yeah. He's a
if
shady.
she, yeah, but if she said, hey, there's a guy who's after me. He won't leave me alone. He's stalking me. He's following me. He has tape from this thing in the past where like I had to kill these people who were trying to kill me, and he's trying to follow me around with this. Sorry, I don't know. Like maybe there's a bit more motivation for why he'd be like, yeah, it's okay. I'll kill him for you. It's a little weak either way. I
Yeah,
think.
either way, like the fact that he's just like immediately.
Unless it's just a joke, kind of in the sense that, like, yeah, he's just a ruthless agent. He'll do anything for his client. Like, is that what
Yeah,
they're
but
going
like,
for?
is that what they're going? I guess that is sort of what they're going for because like eventually what will happen, what will result from this, is that she dresses up. Like essentially in like this 80s form of makeup war paint, goes out clubbing to lure Kevin Bacon into an alley where Gus, her agent, and I, I don't even remember who the other guy is. Like the other guy with the two Dobermans who show up, like he shows up for no reason like in that final scene with Kevin Bacon. The Dobermans are just there to,
Well,
I
get
guess
rid of the evidence is
I
sort of how they. That's
but
what they imply.
crushing the car is getting rid of the evidence. Like they're not gonna fucking find it. It's in the middle of it. Like okay, whatever. Yeah. She
Don't think about it too much. Apparently,
Yeah, she
that's the moral.
calls somebody she knows who has Dobermans. I don't know where he came from. He might have been
I
the
guess
director of the porno from the very first scene. I think maybe.
it's. I don't remember who it is, but it's probably one of Gus Fring's guys.
Yeah,
Like one of his goons.
but like the next scene is like the immediate result of her telling Gus Fring what happened is they kidnap Kevin Bacon. They knock him out. They chain him up to his car steering wheel, and then they just like
Crush him to death.
crush him to death with a hydraulic junk press.
Okay, so a couple things here. Luring him out to kill him is fine, I guess. I like it when they get the jump on him and they like hit him over the head and he kind of falls off
Yes.
the loading bay curb or whatever you'd call that. Like it's pretty blunt and harsh in a way that some of the violence and the gore is pretty effective. It gets you. It's like, oh shit, that's gnarly. I like that. There's something gnarly about being crushed to death inside of a car compactor. But the whole thing feels like, shouldn't this be more Maxine's doing? Like, shouldn't she kill him?
Yeah.
Narratively, it's weird that her agent does it for her, and she just kind of stands there and go, "Hey, thanks for taking care of this for me."
Yeah,
I mean, obviously she had a part of it, but it's just like what.
And I would like so the makeup that she does, to lure him out when she puts that on and goes out. I'm fine with it in a better version.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if
Jen
this
says
was
it is. Jen says it is the porn director with the Dobermans.
okay, yeah.
So
I'm glad. Okay,
I guess,
I'm glad.
I guess
picked
he's
up.
just fine with it. I guess he's just fine with killing people.
Yeah.
The more people you have involved, the more it's like, oh, I guess they're all cool with this.
Which makes it even a little stranger, right? That like the overall message of the overall ending point of the movie is that the ones who are the people who are concerned about the moral degeneration of the youth are the bad guys, when like these people are at the drop of a hat apparently willing to just like brutally murder this guy and feed him to their dogs. For somebody who they barely
while he's alive, not while he's incapacitated, because he wakes up in the car and then they crush him to death.
They wait until he wakes up, which again, and so here's another thing that I thought was about to happen, right? Is like she doesn't know who at this point who the guy who's following her is. She doesn't know who Kevin Bacon's client is, right?
Yes.
She just knows that Kevin Bacon, for whatever reason, has decided to take it upon himself to kill her because she punched him in the face with her car keys in her hand. Right, like which is going against what his job was, in the first place. So whatever, maybe it's just personal this time.
Okay, that it must be that, because if the only reason I could imagine for why he's still following her at all is because he hasn't gotten paid yet and he's trying to make sure that happens. But if that's what he's doing, then killing her kind of goes against that.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, that's
so I'm not sure. Maybe he's just so angry that he's like, "Nah, I'm just gonna kill you now." Either way,
yeah, it's dumb. It's fucking dumb. And so, they wait until he wakes up to activate the junk press.
Yeah,
and as it starts going down, he starts telling them like, "I'll tell you who I work for. Let me out. I'll tell you who I work for. I'll tell you where you can find." You would think, right, that this is what she's after. She can get the jump on whoever's after her. Like this,
you would think she'd want to know. Yeah, her strategy seems to be just ignore it. Like, nah, I'm not. It's almost more befitting of the title of the movie, Nope. where she's like,
Yeah.
mm-mm, nope, I'm not doing that. Like, oh, come to, like this guy wants to meet you. Come to his house in the hills, and she's like,
Nah,
I'm not doing that.
not
No, thanks.
interested. I've got work.
I've got work to do. But you would think she'd want to know, right?
Yeah.
Because this is the person who's following her ostensibly to try and,
Well, this is the moment, like the moment she starts putting on the war paint makeup, right, which like the streak across her face, is the moment where she's basically decide like the director has told her, like, because she showed up late to set, right, and the director
mhm.
has told her, don't be late again, right, this is your last, like, I will replace you, this is your last chance.
Oh,
Like
and the big line is whatever is happening in your life that's interfering with this project,
squash
crush it,
it, yeah.
squash it. Yeah.
Right. So she has told her to do that, and she goes, all right, you know what? I'm going to do it, right? And so she is fully aware that there is a mysterious person who is looking for her specifically, who has hired Kevin Bacon to do this. So she has taken out she goes out and she gets Kevin Bacon. And like the logical step here is to go, all right, well, he's not really the big kahuna, right? He's the bait
Mhm.
fish. I'm after, like, she's not after him. That's not the problem. He is not the problem. Whoever hired him is the problem, and she should know that. But instead of leveraging her position, and she doesn't have to keep him alive at the end,
You could
right?
kill him either
She can
way.
kill him
Yeah.
either way, but like she gets him to a point where he is willing to tell her everything she needs to know, and instead of taking him up on it, learning about it, and then killing him like we would expect from a ruthless, smart person, she just lets him die and then tries to ignore whoever his client is who hired him, and then decide, like, she's like, I'm not gonna bother with that, it's done and dusted, Kevin Bacon's dead. And then immediately, like, that is symbolized, her attitude towards that is symbolized by her crumpling up the envelope with the address on it and throwing it into the trash. And then in
And
the
it's only
exact same scene, like less than 2 minutes later, she is back fishing the envelope out of the trash to find the address so that she can go take care of that part of the problem. Like, why wouldn't you have her get the information from Kevin Bacon and then go, like, make the play off of that? Like, what's the point of having that scene?
I don't know. I totally agree with you that it's a very dumb choice because then we talked about it earlier, but it gets back to the only reason that she does decide to go after him is because she went, oh wait, that's the same address, and I'm like, you didn't put that together earlier.
Yeah, the flashback, like, oh yeah, the party in the hills. And so
You would think she's on a crusade now to solve the problem and to squash this completely, but then she kind of has these stops and starts for no obvious reason. And like you said, she when he's like, "I can tell you who I work for," she should have stopped it and said, "Okay, who do you work for?" And then maybe kill him anyway. That was probably what you would do. Um, Really quick, in the comments, Exhumed Legume, the message that didn't come through on YouTube that he's testing to see what part of it YouTube didn't like, the message was, but guys, Christians am bad because conservative and patriarchal, probably. That's that's kind of the gist.
kind of it, yeah, like,
Kind of, yeah, because, well, clearly the good guys here are willing to kill people. And I don't want to be too uncharitable to Ty West and say that he thinks that they're perfectly good, because obviously he
yeah, he
doesn't.
doesn't.
But the people who are even worse in his mind are the like very hardcore Christian conservatives, right? Both are ridiculous, I think. Both sides, because like we just mentioned, like her agent and this porn director are just willing to kill this guy pretty brutally for stalking her or for following her because he was hired to do it. Like they just murder him in pretty brutally. But then meanwhile, the people who are the real problems and need to be destroyed by our main characters by the end, in a triumphant moment at the end of the movie, are the people who are concerned about all this moral degeneracy, but who are just for no reason willing to kill to stop it and to be just as brutal. No one's motivation really lines up in this, but especially not the villains.
Yeah. Also, apparently, so the message didn't come through on the stream, saying it doesn't come through on top chat, but I got it on live chat this time. I'm doing it properly. doing the good boy thing. I don't know why it didn't, because I can see it. I don't know why it didn't show up on the stream.
I
But yeah,
don't know. I don't know why either, but
who knows?
who knows? We read it, so there you go. Um, yeah. So that's the end of Kevin Bacon's story. They kill him,
Yeah,
but
that's the thread with Kevin Bacon, right? Is that
you know what?
he's hired to find her. He does. Then he keeps at it for no good reason. Gets punched, takes it personal, tries to kill her, gets killed. That's it.
Yeah,
It's really lame.
it's really lame. And the other thing that bothers me about it, I've mentioned this already, but the main problem with the way they kill Kevin Bacon is that I want her to be the one killing people when she's getting other people to do it for her. It doesn't make her seem as bad. I feel like her agent who's helping her out should be a little hesitant about killing for her.
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand. Like it makes her seem so much less extreme, and I feel like her being extreme is the
Or
whole
if we
point.
saw her have to convince him, right? Like, because
Yeah,
she's got, like, we've established that, like, the superpower of Maxine is that she has it, right? Like, she has that.
willing to go there. Yeah,
She has that X factor, that extra charm. That's
she
like
should be the one.
something that
Like if
really
she
just
needs,
gets people to work, like to
yeah,
want to work with her. Like she's a fucking porn star who manages to convince these people to let her have a starring role in this movie. And it's like that's the superpower that she has, is that she can do that kind of thing. But she doesn't have to use it once outside of that first scene.
yeah. She doesn't have to convince anyone. If anything, it should be like they should be a little hesitant about how extreme she is. I don't know why she needs their help really at all. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? I guess there's like getting rid of the evidence or whatever. It would be more interesting to me if they killed him a different way, that she killed him and got help covering it up.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
it would
and
be more
maybe she
interesting to
really
me if
she
she
really
actually
needed.
seemed interested in solving the overall problem and
Well,
not
there's
just
that,
like
but
that
yeah,
one.
but just focusing on this one thing, if she killed him and then had to beg for help and like be really convincing in order to
Yeah.
convince
Yeah.
her agent to help her, and like, she exaggerated, she lied, she like made up exactly how bad this guy was, or you know what I mean, and we get to see what she says and how it differs from what we saw actually happened. That seems like the obvious thing to do, but no, instead Kevin Bacon's story's over in the easily the worst way possible, except for the fact that him getting crushed inside a car is a cool death, I guess, for a
Yeah.
movie.
And when it's fun, like the effect is pretty cool, the blood and bits of the blood and bits that shoot out of the car, like, waterfall out of the car is kind of nice.
Yeah, it's in that sense, really alone is it interesting.
Yeah, like, other than that, it's pretty lame. So we've got our Night Stalker thread. That's done. That's
Oh
non-existent
yeah,
at this point. We're
and to
past
make it
that.
clear, we established that the Night Stalker's going around killing people, but none of the people involved in this movie are killed by him. The dad who is after Maxine fakes it to kind of look like the Night Stalker did it,
Not
and then
convincingly enough that the
not
detectives are
no.
convinced it's the Night Stalker. So
No, not convincingly. And then we see in news footage that he was caught independently of everything that happens in the story. So that's just kind of a bait and switch, and not a particularly interesting one. What other threads are left? Because we're coming towards the ending again. Um,
the other threads are like, so the movie, there's the other girl from the Puritan one, right, who she meets Maxine, and she's kind of like ditzy and dismissive of her. She seems nice enough, but she's not
those scenes are
really.
worthless. Those
Yeah,
scenes are worthless. And I'll tell you, there's a real missed opportunity here. There's one scene, she's talking to Lily Collins, who plays the actress who was in the first Puritan movie, who is going to be in this movie in flashbacks or something of that sort.
yeah,
She's talking to her and she's like, hey, that director, she's tough, but she's good. So
and she's
stick with her.
loyal. Like
She's loyal.
she brought me back. Like, I was burnt to a crisp in the first movie, but she brought me back, so she's like, she's tough, but she's loyal and she'll keep giving you work.
Why are
If
we
she,
doing all this work to characterize the director if we're not going to do anything with it?
yeah, I
You know what I
like,
mean? We spend so much time being like, oh, she's very self-serious, exacting, but loyal director, and like, oh, Maxine is gonna stick with her because this is her one shot, and then we'll see, we'll test how far that goes. No, we don't test it.
it's
It
just
doesn't even
every
come up in the
time,
movie.
it's literally just to keep reasserting that this is Maxine's big break, and she better not fuck it up.
Yeah,
Like,
but then there's no opportunity to fuck it up.
yeah,
You
I
know what I
know.
mean? Like, I mean, except for like the one day she's late to set because the past is following her, but they do it in the lamest way possible.
Why is she even late? Like, what did she oversleep or something? I can't even remember. It wasn't even.
Is that because Kevin Bacon was chasing her? I don't even remember.
I
She's like, I gotta go to set. I can't remember why.
yeah, I
What was
don't
she
even
doing?
I don't even remember why she's late. She's just
Oh,
like,
she's talking. She's talking to the detectives.
oh right, yeah, yeah, okay, yeah, yeah.
But she could have just left at any time. It's kind of a dumb reason. It's not a very strong reason. Um,
Well, and
the,
she could try to like we could have had a moment where she's like, "Hey, sorry, I'm late. I was talking like these detectives, these cops, caught up with me and like they wouldn't let me go or whatever." And then we could see the director be like, "I don't care. You got to be here on time." That kind of
yeah,
thing, right? Like that way that characterizes the director as a more exacting and like self-serious person than having this other actress who is going to show
yeah.
up for a fucking single scene, right? Where she just like she forgets Maxine's name and she just kind of like jets off. She's like, "Oh, I gotta go. I was invited to a big party in the hills, just like the others, right?"
And
So,
then she ends up
and
dead
then she ends
too.
up
Yeah.
dead. That's it. She's gone. She's out of the fucking movie.
Speaking of wasted potential, because there's quite a bit of it. There's the one thing because the scenes with Lily Collins are pretty worthless, I would say.
Absolutely.
Which is unfortunate because I like Lily Collins as an actress as well. But so the scene where she forgets her name as she's leaving, do you remember what she calls her? Nadine or
Nadine.
something?
Yeah.
She calls her Nadine. Now I'm going to ask you two questions, Hugh.
Okay.
First thing I'm going to ask you is what does Maxine do when this other actress forgets her name? And then I'm going to ask you what would the character from X do? The first question, what does she do in the scene, Hugh?
Well, what she does is she kind of gives a listless, longing look back and then like sort of walks away disappointed and sort of unsure of herself.
Now, okay, yes, that is true. Correct. Good job. 1 for 1 so far. Now, what would the character from X do?
I she'd probably like get really
She'd correct
angry.
her.
She'd correct
She'd
her.
correct her.
She'd
She
correct
said,
her and
It's
overcorrect her. She'd be
Maxine.
it's Maxine actually. It's Maxine.
You're gonna want to remember that.
Yeah.
Or something like that. She'd say something sassy and confrontational, and she'd correct her, and she wouldn't let it stand because her whole thing is that she wants to be famous, and and she's like, "I'm gonna be famous," She would, and she has no sympathy for other actresses. She doesn't feel any sort of kinship with them. She's out for herself, and she's going to be her big break or whatever. And someone kind of makes the mistake of forgetting her name. That would upset her.
Well, and
That would make her
she's
angry.
critical of other people because she thinks she's better than them, right?
Yeah.
And so she's not going to sit that character, the character from the first scene of this movie, not even just from X, the character from the
Yes.
first scene of this movie would have like got in her face about it. And like she wouldn't be taking shit off of this B movie horror actress who isn't like gives her that performance where she kind of like does a fake scream that's really sort of pathetic, right?
Yeah.
She's not taking shit. She's not taking
No.
being called the wrong name off that character. So why does she do it here? I don't know. I have no because she's rattled. I guess that's like what we're going with is like she's off her groove.
But why?
Is this like the Austin Powers lost his mojo arc for her?
I don't know. But it's really lame. I feel like she should have had some sort of sassy, like, it's Maxine, and she says what? Like as she's about to close the door, like, it's Maxine. My name it's not Nadine, it's Maxine or something like that. She's like, oh, okay.
And then we
she's
give
like,
Mia Goth like
it's like you'll want to remember that or something, and she walks away.
You give Mia Goth some shit to work with there. Like that would have
They don't give her anything to work with in the back half of this movie. Because we're almost towards the end. Eventually, her friend who works at the video store, he gets killed by the dad.
Yeah.
And so now she's like, oh no, the only person I actually care about is dead. Now I guess I better go investigate. She finally goes to that house.
But
Um,
she goes, so he gets killed before Kevin Bacon dies. Because
oh,
like
that's true.
his
Yeah, it's
death
even
is what
worse.
pushes
Yeah.
her to go hunting for Kevin Bacon, but then she kills Kevin Bacon. She knows Kevin Bacon didn't kill him. She knows it was the client. Like she may not know for like sure, but like come on, she knows. She understands like, what's going on.
If she isn't really, really stupid, she should have put this all together by now,
Yeah.
but she
So
doesn't.
like but so and which is makes it even worse that she's just trying to ignore the client the whole time, that she's trying
Yeah.
to ignore whoever hired Kevin Bacon, that she somehow thinks the problem is over at first, or like that she has an opportunity to walk away
Yeah.
after killing Kevin Bacon, because the whole point was that this guy being killed by the person who's been killing off the people near her specifically, that's what pushes her over the edge.
Yeah.
And then she goes
Except
after
that it
somebody
kind
who
of
she's,
doesn't.
yeah, it doesn't, because yeah, it's dumb, man.
It's
And
a
like
mess.
that guy has like he has an okay death scene, I guess, but like they have this like weird, there's this weird scene. I don't know why he included it. Maybe it's, supposed to be like the version sequel bait like he did for X. Um, but he like somebody comes in and there's a conversation that we don't hear, and he tells the person who comes in, yeah, sorry, I'm not in that business anymore. I work at a video store and we're closing, so it's time to go. And like then whoever that was leaves, and then somebody else comes in, or the dad comes in behind
Was
him,
hiding. Yeah,
was
he was
hiding
already
in
in the
there,
store.
and kills him. But like, why
I
do we
didn't.
have that happen?
I didn't interpret that as sequel bait. I just thought it was kind of a throwaway line to try and give his character more depth right before killing him. Like, oh, he used to be, let's say, a male prostitute or something, but now he's got a normal job and he's trying to leave that behind him. And then, or maybe he was just like a gay porn star, whatever it was
Yeah,
that
whatever it
he
was.
has. It just seemed like a cheap attempt to be like, he's got a mysterious past, and then kill him immediately.
Yeah, like I
Like,
don't know if he's setting that up for like a prequel about that guy is what I like.
I doubt it.
And that only occurred to me now, right? Like that I didn't
Yeah.
think that when I saw it in the theater. I was just like, oh, okay. Like I guess I'm not. I don't really care. I'm not really. I don't give a shit
Yeah.
about this guy's past at all. This character is nothing to me. So like I
Not
like
really, except for like as her friend that she actually has a decent
yeah.
camaraderie with, but like because they had wasted so much of the other potential. Like I'm fine with him being a small part, you know,
Yeah.
and I'm even okay with him dying narratively, but it
I'm
just I felt nothing at this point because they had wasted so much other stuff.
what I'm not really like I'm not buying is that he is like the thing that makes her go back to the Maxine from X. Like that
Oh,
his death is
yeah.
what reverts her
Well,
to.
here's the other thing. Why does the dad even kill him?
I man, I have no idea. Why does he kill any of these people?
Okay, so the ostensible reason for killing like Halsey's character and some of these other like prostitutes and strippers and porn stars is that like they're finding these mostly women, it seems anyway, who have become part of this degenerate underbelly of Los Angeles and the Hollywood and all that stuff, and they like give them this opportunity ostensibly to repent or whatever, and then end up just killing them. It's tough because their motivation doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, exactly. That's what
But
yeah.
I know, but on the surface, that's what they're doing. Why do they even kill this guy? He just works at a movie store. Not even like a porn, like they have porn in the back room, I think, is what he implies, but like they have normal movies too. It's just a video
Yeah,
store.
it's just a
Why
video
does he
story. Why does he kill him?
has he seen that she's friends with Maxine and that's why he kills him? Like that doesn't make any sense to me.
No.
It just seems to be like, oh, people around her are dying because her dad is killing them. Why? I don't
Like, is he
know.
specifically targeting the
Oh,
ones who are
okay.
near his daughter? Like,
Oh, here's the other fucking thing. Okay, are you ready for this? Everyone else, they've had to, in big giant air quotes, had to lure up to this house in the hills, which, I mean, that's fine as a motivation for getting them to come there willingly and then killing them instead of having to kidnap people. It's just easier or whatever.
yeah.
But he goes to the video store to kill this guy. Why doesn't he just go to MaXXXine? He's stalking her throughout the movie. Like, there's even a really gross scene where, like, at the peep show, it's a mysterious man all in leather at the time. It turns out to be her dad,
Dad.
like watching at the peep show. So he's been stalking her the entire time. He doesn't. Why does he want her? Why does he want to lure her back when he can just kidnap her? He went all the way through the trouble of coming to the video store to kill this guy. He didn't lure that guy up to the mansion in the hills.
When the video store that she lives above. She
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, that's really stupid. But anyway, he kills him, I guess, for just being friends with Maxine and
or
being near
being
to
gay.
her,
Like
or being gay.
maybe it's because he's gay. I mean,
I don't know. But
maybe
like, how did he?
is he
How does
gay?
he
Like, I don't know.
know?
Like he it's implied.
Okay, yeah. I mean, it's definitely implied he's gay.
Yeah,
But like, how does the dad know that? Why
yeah.
does he care? I don't know. Very thin motivation to kill him, but I guess he dies so Maxine can be even more upset. Whatever. He got fridged. Um, and so eventually she's like, fuck it. I'm going to go find that address because that's where everybody keeps disappearing. Oh my God, I wonder if they're connected. Oh my God, it's the same house that Kevin Bacon was trying to get me to go to. So she finally goes there. She doesn't seem to have her gun, or does she have her gun? Can't remember. Does she have her gun when she's like going to this house? I feel like
No,
she was just walking. No.
just walks in there. She just walks up. The police are following her, right? They're behind her, and like instead, like she goes to the house, and instead of like for whatever reason, they're just like, no, no, no. Give her some space. Let her go and do this. Let's see. Let's wait and see how this plays out. For some reason, why they're stalking her in the first place? Just
They're
like
they're they're staking out her and they're tailing her because everyone around her seems like they seem to have no other leads. That's the only real motivation for why I think they would just be following her at all
yeah,
times, essentially.
I guess.
But yeah, because they know that she's the main character of the movie is the biggest reason. But they must not have any other leads, so they have a tail on her all the time. Because what? Because people around her, some acquaintances, some actual friends have been killed, and she doesn't want to talk to them. That's the reason. I guess she's being suspicious and weird about it because she doesn't say, "I don't know anything that can help you." She's like, "I don't want to talk to you." I guess maybe she's being suspicious, but they must not have any other leads. These people didn't have any other friends or whatever. So they're following her and they're like, "Oh, she's leading us to this house. Let's give her some space and just let her investigate first because the story would be over if we were following her too closely. So let's just hang back and see what happens." Um, then she goes wandering through the house at night. It's kind of uninspired visually, so it's just kind of lame. She's walking through, and oh my God, it's the same door that the other women were killed in front of at the beginning of the movie. And oh my God, it's her dad. Remember her dad from like
From
the
those two scenes in X. Oh my gosh, there he is. Yeah, and
and it turned.
Daily Dose is pointing out she does have her gun, but the dad takes it out of her hand because she's so stunned
Oh
by
right,
the
right.
revelation of his presence that she
Oh
ceases to
God.
be Maxine again. She ceases to be the character that she is.
I was really disappointed in the way she played that because she just goes silent and he's just talking and talking and she has nothing to say. She's not. It's like they're going for shocked, stunned silence, but it really didn't work for me. I just felt like there was way more that she would say or do. Like the reaction just didn't seem to fit with the character I thought she was. You know what I mean?
With the
And
character
then
who had showed us that she was just a scene before, right? Like where
yeah,
she deliberately went out and caught somebody and then killed them in a incredibly brutal, like somebody who was standing in her way, she perceived anyway, and killed them in an
she,
incredibly brutal way. And instead of like, she just kind of goes in meekly. It's revealed that it's her dad. and
We don't
she
really even get much of their relationship because he just talks at her and she stands there in silence. So let's think about their relationship for a minute. He's clearly a hardcore fire and brimstone televangelist preacher guy, railing against the sins and immorality of our culture and all that sort of stuff. She clearly runs away from home and ends up because she wants to be an actress and ends up doing porn, right? So she's left home.
she like yeah in X she's a stripper who she's going to make the porn movie
Right. So
because that's going to be
she
her
ran
big
away.
break, right? Like that's
Yeah,
gonna
she ran away from home a while ago,
yeah.
right? So this isn't new. So when she sees her dad, that she clearly ran away from to get away from that, right? Or to because
Well,
she
yeah, and
felt
like I mean,
there's so
so
many things you can imply and sorry, infer
yeah.
from about their relationship, and then when she sees them, it's just nothing. We get nothing.
And the opening scene of the movie is it's a scene of her dad filming her as a little girl and telling her that she's gonna be famous, she's gonna be a star, right? And then they have this like mantra that they say to themselves, like, "I will not accept a life I don't deserve," and that like then it goes to a Betty Davis quote of like, in this industry you're not they don't call you a monster, you're called a star, something like that,
Something along those lines, yeah.
which is like, that is implying the exact theme of like, okay, yeah, like she's gonna be a ruthless murderous person who is like doing everything she can to become famous, right? She's
hmm
like, which the movie doesn't follow through on that promise
No,
at
not at
all.
all. And the other thing is like, okay, so she's singing and dancing and stuff like that for the church play or whatever. Like it becomes clear that he has a flair for the theatrical as well.
Yes.
That's the only bit of characterization about the dad that I liked is that he's a bit theatrical and that kind of runs in the family, you could say.
Yeah, he
But
pauses before, getting ready to like brand his daughter to say like, "Are we rolling?"
yeah, he's very over the top and
Yeah.
performative, right? And that's the only and he's a preacher that makes sense. Other than that, though, I don't understand any of his motivation. We've talked about it already, but basically, he's come here, he's making a movie about all the worst excesses of Hollywood and all that stuff, and how the youth are being destroyed by it. And in the process, he's just killing a bunch of them, even though all his goons, like that's their children. He's just
Yeah.
killing all these people to get to her, but really he could have gotten to her at any time, but he wants to lure her here so he can put her in the finale of his movie where he's going to give her the opportunity to repent or burn her alive as a witch, but not really because she doesn't really get the opportunity to repent. He's just kind of saying, well, if God wants to stop me from murdering you, he can. And then, of course, he doesn't.
Yeah, I don't
What
understand.
is any of this? Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, and why is he
You
doing?
know what
Why
really?
is he trying to
Oh,
frame it as like as the Night Stalker?
well, okay, so ostensibly he's framing it as the Night Stalker because he wants to make the problem seem worse so it'll be solved quicker. You know what I mean? He
But then he's
it,
filming himself do it.
yeah. Yeah, see that doesn't make any sense, does it? Because what he's doing in killing these people, it's almost and framing it as the Night Stalker is like, look how Hollywood is killing all these people. It's almost like an accelerationist sort of perspective.
Yeah,
Where like if I speed up the collapse by
the Charles Manson idea. Like if we kill Sharon Tate and then frame the Black Panthers,
it'll
we
start the
can.
race war and all
Yeah,
that. Yeah. It it seems to be a little bit like that. See, look how evil Hollywood is. Like all these people are being killed. And then simultaneously he's like, repent or be killed. That doesn't make a lot of sense. You know what would have made more sense, I think. This is my rewrite. If we have to keep him and the sort of like evangelical right as the
yeah.
antagonist or a force of antagonism here, which I wouldn't want to do. I'd throw the whole thing out. But if we're gonna do that, it would make more sense if these people are disappearing and they're being held in like a sort of cult compound somewhere where it's like you're going to stay here until you're like reformed and better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That would make more sense. Like they're being held against their will, ostensibly in a sort of cult, essentially, where they're like, we're gonna fix you. We're gonna rid this demon from you. We're gonna, make.
Yeah, it still doesn't quite it doesn't quite
Yeah,
fulfill,
I wouldn't. I would
I
throw it
would
all
throw it
out.
out if I
I wouldn't
could,
do
yeah.
any of this, but that would make more sense than just killing them.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
killing
just
them
killing
or
them
just
on
murdering them.
camera.
Why? Well, yeah, no, you're right, because they're all on camera, except for the guy in the video store. All the other ones are on camera, like it's part of his movie. Okay, so what the fuck is he doing? Uh, he he's making a movie where he's like, look at all these people who are being forced into immorality and sin by Hollywood. Look how evil Hollywood is. And look at me killing them. I'm gonna turn this into a movie that's going to fix the problem somehow. What is happening? Who wrote
It's,
this?
it's, yeah. What like well, and like I'm sure that if you asked him uh to explain exactly what the logic behind that motivation is, he'd say, well, that's the point, is
What would he
that there is
say?
no logic. There is no logic. It's it's hypocritical the way Christianity is hypocritical, and that's the point. Got to show the hypocrisy of these evangelical types, and that's just kind of a really lame answer. I think I feel like that's got to be the only way that you could explain it away. Is like, oh, it's about the hypocrisy of the. It's like,
Yeah, but
yeah,
like
but
they
like everything else that you've done then is pretty hypocritical too. So you're not
yeah.
really putting, like, the egg ends up on everybody's face in this scenario here. Like
Yeah.
you're not making one you're not making a good argument for that, because the
Yeah.
other side is pretty fucking awful too. So like I don't know.
Yeah, and it's a try. See, this is the thing that really annoys me is because it's very much presented in a way that the people, the evangelicals are killing people, and that's all. And meanwhile, Mia Goth is killing people, and that's kind of weirdly morally gray because they're stalking and harassing her and like trying to prevent her from being famous. Obviously, there's some acknowledgement that it's bad, but it's definitely presented as better than the
Yeah.
evangelicals who are killing people, even though
They are
they're like
trying to like stop
they're
their own children from debasing
yeah,
themselves this
they're
way,
doing
and
it.
from like
They're
ending.
doing it like both are really bad, but this movie has it be sort of triumphant for her, and not in a way that I would give it a pass. Like because in a better movie, you might be. I could see the criticism that like like she kills people and she gets a happy ending, and it's like well it's kind of ironic. It's not necessarily a perfectly happy ending, but in
Yeah.
this movie, she does it's basically implied that she is going to go on to be a star and that this basically just ends here and that she's
Like that it's that it if it that
going to
it
go on to have a
encourages the
successful
growth,
career
right? Like
like it's a trend thing.
sorry, there was a little cut off there. I didn't realize. But yeah, it's like it encourages the growth of her career. Like that by doing this, she actually ends up getting exactly what she wanted in exactly the way she wanted it, which
Yeah,
is
and part of
bizarre.
what framing it frames it positively because at first she's not at all sympathetic to these women being killed. And it's like, well, maybe they should save themselves like I did. Like she's ruthless, she's cutthroat, she's out for herself. And then eventually they kind of play it like, maybe I will go try and investigate this. Maybe I will try and help the next woman by facing this problem head on. Even none of that makes any logical sense, but that's how it's framed. And so it's framed like she's actually doing something selfless for once. You know,
Yeah.
it's like it is framed positively and triumphantly that she kills this guy who's doing something evil, even though she also does evil things. And so it does feel strangely moralistic, but also like vapid and also murky and also nonsensical. Like I don't it's a mess.
Yeah.
Thematically, especially, the movie is a giant mess.
Well, and so we've got to the point. So her dad, um, basically like he's keeping the limbs of the actress from the Puritan One in a suitcase at the top of the stairs, which she stumbles over, and then it falls, and we get the reveal that she's been mutilated and stuffed into a box. And then he puts a plastic bag over Maxine's head, and she passes out, and she wakes up. And where does she wake up, Jamie? Tied to a tree.
Tied to a palm tree, in the middle of a pool, like a
Like a
fancy LA
fancy
pool.
a fancy 80s LA pool, surrounded by the cultists who are, willing to kill
They're
her.
wearing white robes and have like black paint over their faces. It's very explicitly culty. But remember, all the people who are in this cult are people who are sympathetic to his cause because people they know, loved ones they know, have been like chewed up and spit out, even killed by this horrible Hollywood culture. And meanwhile, they're just helping him kill these people and making a movie about killing these people so they can fix it, I guess.
Yeah, so that they can reveal how bad it has really gotten.
They're just straight up faceless goons, right? They have shotguns on them.
Yeah,
Like they're all armed.
they're all
So-
armed to the fucking teeth, and she's tied, bound, and gagged on camera at this, like, surrounded by goons who have guns, and like her dad wielding a firebrand in front of her, right, pointing it at her face. How does she get out of it?
the cops come and save her.
In one of the clumsiest shootouts I've ever seen put to film.
It's pretty bad.
It is really, really bad. Yeah, the two detectives show up and they take out the entire army of faceless cult goons. As Maxine,
I guess they're just bereaved parents. I guess they don't have a lot of firearm trainings, but still, it's very odd. I want to talk really quick about wasted potential because that's the theme, right? That's the theme of the stream. When she meets her dad, the dad monologues at her and she says basically nothing, and then she's incapacitated. So she doesn't really get to do much acting or monologuing or dialogue. There's no real meat on the bone there. Then she gets tied, bound, and gagged, and she doesn't really have the opportunity to say anything in this scene either. And then she doesn't save herself. She's saved by these cops. And then we'll get to it, but most of the final confrontation with the dad happens between the cops and the dad off screen. She eventually finds him after he's already been shot. This is Maxine's story, guys. What are we doing here? She gets nothing to do in the climax of the movie. This is her story.
oh my god! Yeah, wait, did you already talk about what happens after her dad escapes? Because she sets her dad on fire, and he jumps immediately into the pool right next to him because of course he would do that. Like clearly that's not gonna solve the problem, right? And then he escapes and runs away. Have you talked about what happens as she and the detectives give chase?
No, I haven't.
Okay, real quick, because Jen brought up something that I did not notice. One of the cult members in who is like helping kill these people is Jenna Ortega's character's father.
Well, let's think about his motivation for a minute. His daughter goes off to be a boom operator on a porn film.
Probably would not be aware of the fact that she ended up getting into porn, but like let's say that realistically he probably would not. But let's say he did. He found out that she got into the porn and then got brutally murdered by some people in Texas at the site she was. They
don't know who did it. That's an unsolved murder.
Yeah. And he's lashing out and blaming movies and porn as a whole for killing his daughter.
All right. That's okay. It's not entirely unreasonable that he would go there with it. So what does he do? He decides to join a cult that is killing people just like his daughter. Who find themselves in porn and prostitution and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, because that makes sense, right? Like that's what a bereaved father who's and the only way is I should clarify too, because Quantum Maxine's dad probably showed him the tape, so yeah, so he showed.
If he did,
This
Because, okay,
bereaved
so the
father
only
is like the only way that you know that this is her father is because he's walking around. He shows up in a couple scenes, but he has her face on a shirt. You know, like a
yeah,
"Remember my daughter, say her name" kind of thing, right? He's
yeah.
he's trying to keep, yeah. Hollywood stole my daughter is the sign, right? That he's holding up, and that's the only way that you know that you can put that together. What? Why would he be motivated to come to Hollywood and kill people who are going through the same thing that his daughter is going? People who
Who was
represent his
killed,
daughter,
by the way?
who was
Like,
murdered.
yeah, it's baffling. That's the word for it. And I know he just intended that to be like, see, it connects to X. But he didn't think about their motivation at all. And see, the problem with doing that from his perspective, if we're Ty West and we want to make this really lame sort of like, the real villains are the evangelicals criticizing this because they're such hypocrites that they'll kill to solve the problem or whatever stupid thing he believes. If you're trying to make that case, it was kind of a mistake to sort of humanize him that way. In a lot of ways, they're all faceless goons, but then you're like, oh no, that's the dad. That's Jenna Ortega's dad. Like, that's a grieving parent who lost his daughter in a brutal murder. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
what are you saying now about who he is as a person? You know what I mean? If he's just a faceless goon, you're just like, oh, whatever. This is a lame caricature of a certain type of person. But now it's like, it's more real, it's more concrete, and it makes it even more baffling that you characterize them this way. Because he's standing there in a cult robe with like black paint over his face and a shotgun. Like like we got to make a movie where we kill all these people so we can show how bad Hollywood is. I can't believe that's the motivation. That's the actual
It's
motivation.
yeah.
They're gonna make a movie where they're killing people who are victimized by Hollywood to show how bad Hollywood is for victimizing them. That's insane. It's wild. Anyway,
So
so
yeah, so her dad
really,
escapes.
yeah,
Well, we'll get to
he goes.
because this part pissed me off so much. But I was just like, are you fucking like, are you kidding me? So her dad escapes and runs off into the hills behind the Hollywood sign, right? And the cops who have killed all the faceless goons, they're all dead. All the goons are dead. There's no more bullet fire going back and forth between anybody. The cops tell Maxine, stay here, we'll go get him. And off screen, you hear some shots, and Bobby C is hit. And Maxine runs up to him after he's been shot off screen, and the female cop tells Maxine, here, stay with him, put some pressure on this wound. I'm gonna go get your dad. She runs off screen. He dies in Maxine's hands, finally being up at the Hollywood sign, even though he's lived there forever and he wanted to be an actor. He's never been up to the Hollywood sign. This is kind of nice. It's a fun little moment
There's
for him.
something kind of funny about it in the
Yeah.
context of him being killed. Is like, I wanted to be an actor too, and then he dies.
Yeah, it is kind of funny. I didn't mind that part. But then Maxine leaves because he's dead. There's nothing to be done for him. She leaves. She runs further up the hill. There's some more off-screen shooting. And then the female cop shows up, like, from off-screen with a cross sticking out of one of her eyes and goes, I got him! I got him! And then she falls down the hill and dies. What are we doing? What?
Because I was so not invested in that finale when that happened. I laughed pretty hard. It's very funny to me that she's like, I got him, with a cross sticking in her eye, and then she just dies immediately.
She just falls down. She just rolls down the hill, and you hear her go, whoa! And, like, make this, like, cartoonish noise as she, like, tumbles away and is gone from the movie forever.
Gone.
Dead.
Yep.
And then Maxine comes up and finds her dad, like, basically lying wounded in front of the Hollywood sign. And she picks up there's a sawed-off shotgun right there that she picks up. And then this is where we get to the point where the helicopter snaps a spotlight down on her and is watching her as she holds a shotgun over her father. She has the flash forward where she imagines her life, imagines herself as, like, the hero of Los Angeles who's also a movie star, right? Like, wow, you really showed it to that serial killer, and also you're the biggest star in Hollywood today. You've got one, like, wow, what a legendary performance. We always knew you were something. What's next? What advice? Like, basically just like the Travis Bickle thing from the end of Taxi Driver, where
Yeah.
everybody's like hero worshiping him, right? And then it
Hmm.
flashes back immediately to her. It's like, oh nope, that was all hallucination. She's standing over her dad with the shotgun, and she has the moment where she says to, like, say it with me now. I will not accept a life I don't deserve. And they have the callback to the opening scene. She says something like, I think she tells him, like, thank you for giving me what I needed, divine intervention, and then she blows his head off. And then it goes to 1 month later, and
They're
everything
making the
they're
movie,
making the
and
movie, and it's
that's
going to be
it.
a hit. And she's like, the director is like, you've been really a lot going on here, and you've handled it pretty well. Given any thought to what you're going to do next? So it's like a hint that, like, oh yes, the director the director likes her, and they're going to keep going, and like, oh yes, her career is taking off. She's still snorting cocaine in, like, out in the open, just like before every scene. We're not gonna, like, even touch on the that
Yeah.
and the
Well,
implications of
there's
that.
there's there's more to talk about everything that happens in the 1 month later and how worthless and time wasty it is. But let's rewind a bit. So when she kills her dad, like you said, she repeats the scene that started the movie, like, I will not accept a life I don't deserve. Thank you for giving me divine intervention, then shoots him. The only thing I like about that is the way the head explodes. That's kind of
Yes.
fun and gory. Otherwise, it's pretty lame for a number of reasons. A, she's had nothing to do in this entire climax, and then she just kills him, even though the cops are right there, and that doesn't affect anything. And it has no effect on the story going forward. Once we get to the 1 month later thing, I want to respond to one thing in the chat. Let's see. Daily Dose said, not a grieving parent to Ty. He's an oppressor who held his daughter back, probably. See, the thing about that is, I don't actually know what Ty West thinks. It's not clear. It's very muddy and murky. Like, you know what I mean? In terms of what he's even trying to say is pretty unclear. All that is clear is that he thinks that the evangelicals are worse for going to extreme lengths to stop this problem than the people who are going to extreme lengths to, like, keep it going. Like, I don't understand what he's going for, other than that
No.
clearly the repressive evangelicals are bad. And okay, this is my attempt to summarize the whole ethos of this movie. Yeah, Hollywood is seedy and gross and immoral in a lot of ways, but the people who are railing against it are hypocrites who are even worse.
Yeah.
That's about it. That's about it. And, like, it doesn't, if you try to get any more fine grained about it in terms of, like, oh, what does he think about the Jenna Ortega's dad? Is it like, are they oppressors for forcing them into like porn and stuff like that? I don't know. It's all too murky. It's all too, like, very poorly executed.
Well, and what's weird is that Jenna Ortega's character from X doesn't really seem like she doesn't seem like she would be the type to.
She's just like a student. She's a film
She's like
student.
a film student who ends up deciding, after a one night where a bunch of people espouse the virtue, like, where her seedy boyfriend espouses the virtues inherent in pornography, she decides to get into pornography. Like, that's basically the extent of her character. Like,
And
she
as mentioned in the chat, he has a sign that says "Hollywood stole my daughter," and it's like, did it even? Because they weren't in Hollywood,
yeah, she
weren't
was
they?
just making a student film in Texas.
Yeah. But if you mean by Hollywood, as sometimes people do, the film industry, I guess, but it was on the most indie of indie porn productions in Texas. So Hollywood didn't even steal your daughter, really. But setting that aside, why are you willing to kill people who were also stolen by it? That doesn't really make a lot of sense. Yeah,
Like,
so
if you're blaming the film industry and Hollywood, right? You're not gonna kill, like you're blaming the higher ups, and like the kinds of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
arguments that these people make, right? Like the Pizzagate people and the Hollywood, like super adventure club that exists, right? Is like they believe that the producers, the people like the Harvey Weinsteins, that group, right,
Hmm.
are the ones who are harming children. Their children. Let's say, like, especially in the instance of this movie, it's literally their children. Why would they kill people who are not like they're not really they're on the fringes of this industry, number one, and they are the ones who they would view as Ty, please explain
Yeah.
to me how that makes any sense as a motivation.
Uh, it doesn't make any sense, and I still don't understand why he didn't push Maxine. Because here's the thing, right? We set up like, I won't accept a life I don't deserve, and she's gonna do whatever it takes to get the life she thinks she deserves. And in the end, she should probably fail, and it should sort of end tragically for her, because then she kind of would get the life that she actually does deserve. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That feels like the obvious way you would go with it. Like
Uh,
she's so desperate to be famous because that's what she thinks she deserves that she's willing to kill people that get in the way, and then she gets her comeuppance, and because she gets what she actually deserved. You know, like it's easy. Here's the thing about X. X isn't like some brilliant masterpiece. It's just a perfectly fine slasher movie with some interesting ideas done relatively
yeah.
okay. You know what I mean? It's simple.
It's
This could have
capable.
been
It's a
this could
perfectly
have
capable small.
this could have been simple and capable too, but it just isn't.
No, it's unwieldy. It's. I mean, it's a little bit like you see all where the money went to. It looks good, like the set
Yeah.
deck looks nice. There's a lot of. I mean, it's really well designed.
There are a lot of talented actors
There's a
here.
lot of talented actors, but it's sprawling and unwieldy, and there's a bunch of thread. We've gone through them all. Like, there's a bunch of threads that are sort of vaguely connected, but they kind of go on these big roundabout circular ways to get to where they're going, and it doesn't quite congeal by the end of it. Not in, like so it's he overcomplicated it incredibly detrimentally to like the overall whatever it was that he was attempting to, get across.
This could have been a very simple movie, all things considered. I mean, there's
Yeah.
still some things to juggle, but like, I don't know. I don't know. This is a giant mess. Okay, we're almost at the end here. So, like you said, we see her fantasy of becoming famous, only to cut right back out from that. I don't know why we did that. We didn't show anything like that didn't actually happen before. But I guess we're doing a little like flash forward, half fake out dream sequence. Stupid, cut it. Then she goes back and she kills her dad in full view of the police helicopter above her. This has no real effect on her life apparently at all. Because a month later they're still making the film. They're not even done making the film. It's not even out yet, and all they're doing is like you mentioned that the director is like, you're doing pretty good in this movie so far. What are you gonna do next? Like I don't know why they're having that conversation. There's a moment where everyone's gathered on set and they have a quick moment of silence for Lily Collins, the actress from the first movie, because she died. And
So like we're basically confirming that like everything happened. This isn't another hallucination sequence. This isn't
no,
another like yeah, no,
all
it
of
all
this
happened.
happened, and she died. And there's this moment of silence for her, and I kept expecting like, why are we seeing this scene? Like, what's going to happen? Is there going to be like a little joke, a little punch to the end of it? No, it just happens, and then they keep going. I'm like, why are you showing me this? Like, why? What is the point? There's so much that happens in the 1 month later sequence. It's so utterly pointless, and I'm getting to the big one. So eventually, they're like, oh, we see the mold that they made from her head, and they put it on the bed, and it's got a little blood like pooling at the bottom of it. And they like, all right, and action. I'm like, okay, they're gonna do some sort of special effect with blood spurting out. Is something gonna happen to the head? Is it gonna float in the air? Like, we don't know anything about the movie, so I don't know what is. They mentioned that this is part of a dream sequence. I'm like, what's the head gonna do? Is it gonna do something fun and interesting? No, it just cut. The credits start rolling over the shot of the head on the bed, and the camera just pulls out until it eventually pulls all the way out of the stage, and then it starts showing the Hollywood landscape. Like, what was the point of the head? You, please tell me.
I
I'm dying to know what the point of that was.
I have no idea. I have no clue. I have no idea. Is it
Like,
is there a point? Because like, is it meant to just reflect the ending scene of Pearl, where she's like, it's just a shot of her holding this one really pained smile?
yeah, let's talk about because it does feel like a cheap attempt to try and recapture that magic, but nothing happens and it's worthless. And I like, why are we building up to it like it's the final thing of the movie, and then it's just a prosthetic head on a bed?
Yeah, I don't.
It doesn't relate thematically to anything that happened at all. So what's it doing there? And okay, let's talk about the Pearl end credits because the Pearl end credits are really cool, right?
Yeah,
Like she um she does this little performance, right? And it's kind of like it's like a play. Is it kind of like a dream sequence too? I can't remember the final scene in Pearl. Do you remember?
um,
Anyway,
all I
it
remember from the end of Pearl is that she's got like some she baked something, right? Like there's some prepared dish in her hands, and Howard walks into the house, and she's
oh
got
yeah,
like,
right.
yeah,
Yep. And she like he walks in and sees everything, and she kind of like smiles at him. Anyway, the way it ends is it ends on a shot of her trying to hold this fake, like, I'm still keeping it together. I haven't completely lost my mind smile on her face.
yeah,
And she's just like holding it in place and trying really hard to keep the smile in place. But clearly, it's turning demented very quickly. And by the end, when we finally cut or like fade out, it's a pretty gnarly expression. It's really cool. And I feel like it does a really good job of encapsulating the movie in a nutshell. You
yeah.
know what I mean? Thematically, in terms of Pearl, like wanting really bad to be this happy, smiley, famous person that everyone's going to love, and like just trying to keep it together, but she's losing her mind and she's in a lot of pain and she's done a lot of horrible things. Like that's the movie in a nutshell, right? Uh,
Yeah.
uh, Exhumed Legume says literally objectified question mark for the MaXXXine ending. I don't know, but that wasn't a theme of the movie at all. It
No,
wasn't.
not,
You know what I mean? Because like you might another angle they could have gone, I wouldn't have found it especially compelling, but maybe it's all in the execution, is the whole idea that like her porn background is just keeps getting in the way of her trying to become successful in like as an actual movie star. That she faces a lot of discrimination of a kind for being a porn star, and that's preventing her from showcasing her true talent as an actor, right?
yeah.
Like that's something they could have done, but that's solved instantly in the beginning when there's a director who's like, "No, she's really good. I'll take a chance on her." So that's not a conflict at all. So in terms of her being objectified as like something she's struggling against, or even really doing to herself, like she doesn't have any problem with it, and it's not really a conflict in the movie at all. So her head on the bed becoming a literal object, that doesn't seem to tie into anything else at all. She
No,
doesn't lose her head in the movie in a metaphorical sense either.
because
You know what I mean?
she
Like,
doesn't carry, she barely carries out a single action from the point where she punches Kevin Bacon onwards. Everything else is very much her being incredibly passive and allowing other people to do things for her until, like, I mean, she shoots her father in the face, but he's already been mortally wounded by the police officer. So like that, like she doesn't,
she doesn't lose her mind. She
yeah,
doesn't lose her cool. She doesn't fail in the
she doesn't
end.
spiral out of control. She doesn't like,
No.
like doesn't lose the opportunity because of any actions that she took trying to become famous. Like basically trying so hard that she like loses it and it spirals beyond her grasp. Right? She
No.
doesn't she doesn't lose her mind and come to accept a darker form of like, to like accept infamy as opposed to fame by becoming a serial
That could have
killer herself.
that could have been interesting actually. if she becomes infamous and then kind of accepts that as like, oh, it's the next best thing.
Yeah,
That
that would have
actually, you
been
know
real.
what? I like that actually. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I would have preferred that too. That's what I thought we were setting up for. Like it's like, oh yeah, the Night
Yeah.
Stalker's bad, but actually now there's MaXXXine, who like yeah, who people are like terrified of because she fucked a bunch, like she killed a bunch of people, right? Like
Yeah.
they were trying to stop her from being famous, and she like brutally murdered them. Yeah,
Yeah. I want to respond to a couple things in the chat. Metal Face Rosie says, sounds like a movie specifically made for the cinema snob. Uh, Not exactly, because a lot of cinema snobs don't like this movie. And I think, it's their standards can be confusing sometimes, because there's a lot of visual spectacle and stuff like that. But I think even cinema snobs don't really like how this movie seems to have nothing to say. There's
yeah,
a lot of film snobbery is, this movie has something to say that I agree with and that I like or that I think is smart, and therefore it's good even if the plot sucks. Or you know what I mean?
yeah.
That's a certain brand of film snobbery. The other
That's the
brand of
Annihilation film snobbery, right? Like,
yeah,
yeah,
other types of film snobbery are like, it's subversive because you expect something to happen and then nothing happens. This isn't one of those either. This isn't especially trying to be high art. It's this Ty West thinks that this movie is a B movie with A ideas, but it doesn't have A ideas.
whatever
And
those ideas he thinks there are, that if they're lost, I can't
oh,
puzzle them
cinema
out.
snob as in Brad Jones from Channel Awesome. I don't even know who that is. I didn't realize you were referencing a specific person.
Oh,
Do
yeah,
you,
I am not familiar with this guy.
why isn't our thumbnail showing up in the stream when I look at it on YouTube? It's showing the Disney capital O opinions thumbnail. That's all right.
I don't up there.
Anyway, doesn't matter. Yeah, I'm not sure who Brad Jones from the channel Awesome is. Ah, okay. Well, that's who you're referencing. My bad. Yeah, but this is just. I guess we could just talk about the general reception of the movie then. Um, I'm sure some people like. Okay, so the first half of the movie, I'm like, this is fun. This is a fun cinematic experience, and I think for a lot of people who aren't really looking for it to make a whole lot of thematic sense, they might just be like, there were some fun kills, and yeah, the evangelicals were the bad guys because yeah, I don't like them. They're bad, and there were some fun kills, and she got to kill the bad guy in the end. It was a fun movie. I feel like that might be the level at which a lot of people who do like this movie will like it. There were some cool kills. It had a fun vibe. There was some good acting in it. It looked great. Um, you know, but if you think at all about the motivation of the main villains and all the wasted potential of what could have been a better movie, especially regarding MaXXXine's story, I feel like this movie really falls apart. I don't think the artsy fartsy crowd will like this movie very much. They don't seem to. They seem to have picked up on the lack of any ideas here, and they don't seem to like that. I don't know. It's. We'll see how this movie's reputation continues, but I don't think it's very good. I enjoyed some of it in the moment, but especially after the fact, I don't really like this movie, and I don't intend to ever see it again.
Yeah, I no, I cannot fathom watching this. I wouldn't recommend it. I would say if you're gonna watch any of the three, just watch X.
Yeah, just watch
Just
it.
watch X. You can
And if
skip
you
the other
really
two.
if you really like X, or if you like X enough to be interested in Pearl, then what I would say about Pearl is there's some really fun character stuff, and there's some fun deaths, but like it's not as well tuned of a story. It's a little messy and all over the place. This is worse. This is way worse. This is remarkably incoherent, whereas Pearl is a bit more just kind of clumsy and messy and uneven, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
that's
That's it. That's
MaXXXine. I'm
MaXXXine.
I'm pretty disappointed with MaXXXine. I
I was
really hoped
really
it
looking
was good.
forward to this. Honestly,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well.
Well, I thought it was going to be fun. I thought because, like I said, I didn't like Pearl that much, but at least I was able to play, yeah, Goth being unhinged at points. Like she has a real charm and just like a really chaotic energy that I think.
There's a really, I totally agree with you. There's a really funny moment in Pearl where where the guy who's gonna play Superman is leaving, and she's like, "What do you? What's wrong? What happened? Like, oh, why are you leaving? I thought you liked me." Like
Yeah,
she, the way she screams and yells at him is really funny. I didn't do anything wrong. What's happening? What's going on? Like she's like shouting questions at him. It's like, Pearl, you're scaring me. Relax.
Pearl, you're scaring me. Yeah, it's great. I really like what she's allowed to bring to the table in that movie and what she brings to the table in X. I think she's this one is right after that midway point. She just loses, like he just loses everything that he gave her like to do that was interesting in those other two movies, and she just sort of becomes this passive, passive and sort of like relatively bland character. There's not much going for it by the end.
Yeah.
Um, and Daily
Metals.
Dose
Go ahead.
wrote Daily Dose with his super chat. Thank you very much. I saw this earlier, and I'm glad you brought it back up because I was going to address this. The Heretic trailer played before this movie, and Hugh Grant, Mormon Jigsaw, seems like a way better critique. I agree. That actually looked pretty. It looks like it could be pretty fun. Hugh Grant looks like in that trailer, those few scenes with him, does look like he's enjoying himself in that
Yeah, he's
type of
goofing
movie.
off. Yeah.
Goofing off, he's doing some fun, like there's that scene where
I don't know quite how funny it's supposed to be, but I do really like the visual gag of like, oh, he's lying about baking a pie, and you can
because
tell
there's a
because he just lit a
blueberry
blueberry
pie.
candle. Yeah, a blueberry pie candle, and the way it pans down so slowly and then cuts to her shocked face. That's really funny. I'm curious to know how funny the movie is trying to be. Because the other funny bit, you probably were about to mention it, was when Hugh Grant is like, "It may even make you want to die," and he does this like "ooh" kind of face.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks. I hope it's good. We'll say that.
Yeah, that one. That I
Um,
think that was the only trailer that really caught my attention time around.
did you get the trailer for Long Legs for this?
No, I didn't, but I've seen that floating around, and that looks kind of interesting too.
I'm curious. There's a lot of hype going into this one. It looks. I don't know whether I'm excited or not because I only just sort of liked Black Coat's Daughter, which is um, another movie by Osgood Perkins.
I don't think
So
I've seen that one.
I like Nicolas Cage, and him playing a serial killer seems fun. It seems like Long Legs is trying to be a more overtly scary version of Silence of the Lambs. We'll see how it compares. A lot of people are really hyping this one up ever since it, came out in film festivals and all that sort of stuff. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
Metal's Face Rosie says, "Do you think you'd like it if you're much more into 70s and 80s exploitation films?" Well, I'm not a hyper fan of those, but I do like them. I do like a lot of 70s and 80s horror movies and B movies and stuff like that. They're fun. And I like those elements of this movie. Ty West is remarkably good, or at least decent, at imitating the style and the sort of genre affect of different periods, right? Especially the 70s and 80s. And the 70s retro slasher with gore, that angle of this movie is the best part of the movie. I just think it's not going to be enough to
I don't think
make you
there's
like.
enough of it that if that's why you go to see it, I think you're still going to come away kind of disappointed.
Yeah, it might be enough of it for you in terms of, percentage of the runtime, but I think the story around it just sucks so much that even the cool elements, even the retro flair, even the fun deaths and gore, and the practical gore effects are pretty
Yeah,
fun
they are
for the
pretty
most
good.
part. I don't think that's going to be enough for you. I don't think, if you care about story, especially, it's just, I think the story will kind of ruin all the other aspects for you. That's what it did for me, because, like I said, those are the best parts of the movie.
Yeah,
But it's
and
not
they
enough.
like, but yeah, and I don't know because like when I think of those, I'm thinking of these like sort of bombastic, over the top, like almost like a Tarantino kind of thing, right? Where but like horror, right? Where like we've got a lot of or a thing, you know, because I like a John Carpenter movie where you've got like these really kind of explosive exploitation scenes, right? That's like this just doesn't have that energy, you know? Like there's certain
It has
points where it does,
moments.
like it has its moments, but like there aren't a lot of really creative like so what's that one that In a Violent Nature, that movie just came out, that slasher movie
Yeah.
where
Have you seen it?
I haven't, but a lot of the people that have been talking about it who have enjoyed it, who like you know people I know who are into that 70s 80s exploitation thing, are like the angles of the shots for the kills are really creepy. The gore is really disturbing for the kills. Like the ideas that they come up with for them are really creative, and it's just a really simple by the numbers kind of slasher movie otherwise, but it's just like this. It's shot in a really creative way that you wouldn't think of normally, right? That's what people have
Okay.
been telling me about. And it's like so
Yeah.
like that seems like what you, like if you're asking if it's sort of like that, it's not. It's not at all. It's like he's trying to have Chinatown and do exploitation at the same time, and he's not nailing either one because he won't commit fully to either, you know?
Yeah. So yeah, the whole idea that like this is a B movie with A ideas, I don't think this is enough of a B movie in that sense.
No.
There are some fun creative deaths, but there's not a ton of them. In the kind of movies that this is aping in that regard, there are way more deaths also. There's only really a few here. Some of them, like the shock of them, is effective.
Yeah.
I would say they're effective, but I wasn't so wowed by them that I'll remember them forever or anything like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I have not seen The House of the Devil. Um
I want to though, because that
yeah.
one also looks like it's remarkably effective in mimicking a certain style that movies don't have anymore. It's very 70s looking,
Yeah, that
and
one seems like it's more towards sort of like what he was doing with X. You know?
yeah, I'm a little. I wonder if his writing will get better the further back we go in time, or whether he's just a bit inconsistent on that regard. But
It's possible.
I'm curious to check it out. Matt says, my favorite part in Pearl was how they played with the camera. They would set up stereotypical horror shots, then subvert it, like when she stabs new Superman in the car, the camera pans around him. And I was expecting her to be charging from the side, but she's already around the car and then stabs him. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
some fun stuff like that in Pearl and X. And to, I would just say, a lesser degree here. Um,
Yeah,
like the ball stomping scene,
yeah.
that was pretty gnarly. All the best stuff is in the first half because like for example the final climax action shootout scene really lame, very generic, very uninspired. The gore effect would
Most of the final shootout happens. It's either like like some really uninspired angles happening, where like the two cops are just like they, and it's probably meant to look this way. I would assume like he basically like if I'm being generous, he probably wanted it to seem as if they're just sort of like randomly pointing. Like, I think there's one scene where the male detective like he just kind of like turns around and like randomly points the gun in three different directions, and you see it go bang bang bang, you know, like in three random spots, and then three cultists kind of like fall down, so it looks really low effort and kind of silly. It's like maybe he intended it to look that way, but then at the very end, you know, the villain is shot and incapacitated off screen, so it's like it's not gonna give you that. It's not gonna scratch the itch really. Yeah, the
not
big
enough.
yeah,
Yeah,
the big reveal is like the head of her father exploding as the shotgun blast hits it, and it's like it looks good. You know, it looks good,
yeah.
but it's not really a sad like it's not it. I don't know. It doesn't have what I would expect from you know like a Friday the 13th Nightmare on Elm Street kind of thing. You know, like they have some really creative, you know, like I mean the scene in Nightmare on Elm Street where Johnny Depp gets sucked into the bed and then that giant fountain of blood sprays up from the middle of
Yeah,
it, right? Like that's a pretty creative and like over the top,
and
horny, like
memorable.
memorable
Yeah,
kind of way. Or where she's like floating up on the ceiling and being scratched to bits, like there's all that. I mean, even the original Hellraiser has some better kills than you would see from this, right? And like, I'm not you know us. We're not big fans of the original Hellraiser, but that's what, like, when I'm thinking of that, like if that's what you're into, you'd get more out of Hellraiser, the original ones,
yeah.
in that regard. So like,
It doesn't go all the way in the exploitative B movie
yeah,
sense. It's also rather tame in the sort of nudity, like titillating department as well.
yeah.
Not that like I'm, for a movie so engrossed in that subject matter, I thought it was a bit tame in that regard.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised that we did, like, because we saw Mia Goth's boobs in X. I don't like we see, and the only part we see her boobs in this movie is from the scene in X where we see her boobs. Yeah, so it's like, yeah, they didn't really do a lot of like porn stuff with her, and I guess, like, the whole point is on that, and that's fine. And not that we need to see that, but if your movie is going to be about a porn star trying to make it big in Hollywood, like there's remarkably little porn involved in this one, which is, a choice. I don't think it's a
Yeah,
bad choice, but it's there.
yeah, I wouldn't say it was necessary to include it, but it doesn't really scratch the itch of the
Yeah,
exploitation B
that's what
movie
that's
thing.
what I'm saying.
If you're going for that idea, you should probably deliver on that a little bit, and with the violence and the sex, right? Because that's
Yeah,
kind of the whole deal.
there's a remarkably small amount of sex in this movie. Actually, I think the only scene that, like, where it happens is when they replay footage from the tape, and at the very beginning when she walks in on the porn being filmed, and like the director is like, "Come on, man, finish up," and like the guy is like, "I'm trying." Pretty funny too. So like, yeah, it's I don't know, it's just lame all around. I would not
Uh,
recommend it,
yeah,
even if you're into that kind of like exploitation thing. It's just, it doesn't have
it
it.
doesn't deliver,
It doesn't
and
have
it's
the X
especially
factor this time.
no, it doesn't, and it's especially frustrating if you're like us and you enjoy everything they do in the first half, thinking it's going to go in a certain direction that it doesn't. So it is the kind of movie that, let's say you didn't hear any of this conversation, if you have similar taste to us, you'd enjoy the first half and then go, "Oh, this is dumb. This is getting really dumb. Oh my God, that was terrible," by the end.
Yeah.
So that's almost more frustrating than something that's just kind of boring or bad the whole way through, you know?
Yeah. So yeah, wouldn't recommend it.
Daily Dose in the chat has brought up kinds of kindness. In a sentence, what did you think of the movie? I thought about seeing it because I've seen so many of his movies now. But when I saw that it was 2 hours and 44 minutes long, I was like, really? I'll get around to it eventually. So I have not seen Kinds of Kindness yet. I'm wary of him because he can go. He has a lot of potential, but he seems to go wrong for me quite a bit, especially with the killing of the sacred deer. But
oh, but Jesse
have,
Plemons and Willem Dafoe are back.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I love me some oh God, Fat Damon. That's the
That.
nickname.
Yeah. No, I have not seen that either. 2 hours and 44 minutes of Yorgos Lanthimos is a bit daunting for me, I think.
It's a little daunting.
But I'm
It's it
willing to lay it live. If your one sentence summary is going to be like, check it out. It's if it's better than Killing of a Sacred Deer, um,
My worry with his movies is that they're it's three segments. The first two are good. The third is just kind of boring. Oh, it's not even one long story. It's like three stories back to back. That's
gotcha. Okay, so you could probably watch the first two stories.
I'll wait till that one comes out at streaming. I'm
Yeah.
not going to the theater for that.
Oh, it's in. Okay, yeah.
No thanks. I'll pass. Yeah, because my concern with a lot of his stuff is like there'll be really interesting ideas and there'll be some weird, uncomfortable, shocking, strange things to them, but then in the end it's just kind of like a cynical, hollow, like bleh. Like that's the feeling I get from a lot of his movies. Um, but at least he learned how to do an ending with what's it called? We talked about we talked about it. What's that movie called? The
Sorry,
Emma
which?
Stone one.
Oh, Poor
The one
Things.
Poor Things. Thank you. Yes. At least he learned how to end a movie. It wasn't a great ending,
He
but
did he did tie his narratives together in a nice little bow. So that's something. Conclusion.
yes. Anyway, so that
Yeah,
was
so that's Maxine.
Maxine. Don't I wouldn't really recommend it.
Ah,
I'm sorry to say. I was hoping it'd be good, but it wasn't. I do recommend X though. It's it won't wow you, but it's fun. It's a fun movie.
yeah. It is perfectly serviceable for what it's trying to do. And then if you like that enough and you like Mia Goth, go and take a look at Pearl, because that is a pretty great showcase of what she can do. You know, her talents as an
Mhm.
actress.
Yeah.
For that alone, I think Pearl is at least worth a single watch. You know,
Absolutely. Well, thank you all for hanging out. Um,
always we appreciate it.
we
Super chats.
will be hopefully streaming again next Sunday. About what? I don't know
Who
yet, but like,
knows? We'll
if it's
figure it out. We'll be back
there
after
you
these
go in them there.
short messages. Goodbye, folks.
Thank you for the super chats and for the messages. Good shit in chat. We appreciate it. Take it easy. Enjoy the rest of your day. And movies forever.
Yes, movies. Movies are the